Then there's short form, which is what you're trading off in depth, you're gaining in discoverability, because the algorithms are super tuned. The most attention in the world right now is on short form content, TikTok Reels. For me, if what I want is to be able to prove that I can make videos that stick and storytell, that was like really important to me, is build that skill set. Short form video is the best place to start because it's the most ruthless marketplace. Like, you can only hold someone's attention for 3 seconds if you're making average content. So in order to hold someone's attention for a long time, you got to be really good. And that my thinking was that would sharpen my skills of storytelling the quickest. And maybe I wouldn't be able to build depth through there. Maybe I wouldn't be able to monetize as highly through short form video, but it would give me a platform to kind of build these other channels.
All right, welcome to another episode of Creator Lab. I have a special guest here today, Kallaway. Welcome to the show, my dude.
Let's go. Thanks for having me.
Here we go. Look at that setup, first of all. Beautiful. People who are only listening, which is 99% of people, but you're going to have to click through to the YouTube. Your setup is as good as it gets, and we're going to talk about this whole evolution you've gone through. We first connected, I think it was maybe like 3-4 years ago. I was on your podcast some time back, and we connected probably when everyone was at home, I think. And I've seen you grow, man. So it's amazing to see your progress. You've quit your job now. You're a full-time creator. I want to dig into that, actually. You might be doing some other stuff as well. But just like, I remember when we did your pod, the level of detail you went in with every single piece of the equipment and the sound and the questions, it was so well done. And it's been really beautiful to see you keep progressing. You now got to over, is it 160,000 followers on TikTok? Over 100.
We're getting close.
Yeah. By the time this comes out, I'm sure you would have hit it. So it'll be in a few days or a week. IG, Instagram, you're already over 100K, 114 as of this morning. Over 100 million views on your short form videos. I'm assuming there's mostly those. You've also got espressoletter.com, an email newsletter. And you've got Wavy Labs, which I want to dig into. So that was kind of like the high level, but why don't you intro yourself as well? Well, who are you, man? Why did I invite you onto the show?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so to start with the background, so I grew up in Ohio. So I grew up in a few minutes away from LeBron. That's always how I like center people. So LeBron's high school coach was in my neighborhood. So we'd always see the yellow Hummer, LeBron's yellow Hummer when he was like 16. He'd come over and play like Mario Kart, which is kind of crazy. So grew up in Ohio, family owned a golf course. And so I was super entrepreneurial, like in and around that all the time. Saw how like business was run from an early age. From there, like I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, wasn't sure what it was. Went to school, started my first company at 21 in college, failed big time. We can talk about that, but that was a lot. It allowed me to scratch the entrepreneurial itch, but definitely learned a lot. Ended up going and do strategy consulting, which I really didn't like, but I kind of used it as a platform to fund the experiments on the side and try to like launch side projects, get something working. So the plan was always like, if the day job wasn't something that I liked, which it wasn't, use that money and time, expertise, learn something, build skills, try to launch something on the side. And so we can go through, like, I had a bunch of different projects. The Founder was the pod that I had that you were on. We tried that. I tried to build a morning brew for wellness. During the Web3 era, I tried to build like Kith on Web3 rails. So all over the place, just trying things, trying to build skills here and there. Just quit my job, going full-time creator mode, and we can talk about like the vision for Wavy Labs, which is kind of like the holdco.
But also, I love all the names, by the way. So like that's definitely something we can dig into a little bit as well, because I think a lot of people struggle. Well, I think some people overthink names and they like need the perfect name before they start something, and then there's other people who just don't even really think about it at all and then need to change it later. So like we even talking about your name, right? So your full name is Kyle Kane Kallaway. Yeah.
Kallaway's not even my last name.
Oh, it's not even your surname.
My last name is Sutter. So my full name is Kyle Kane Sutter. So Kallaway is my rapper name. So
okay, I remember this now. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's too many. I need to consolidate the branding, but basically that's something we definitely can talk about, is how to think about like personal branding and everything. But the way I was thinking about it was, one of the first things, so in college, I would freestyle rap. I don't know if people who are listening to this have ever heard of Time Flies, but Time Flies was this duo this rapper and producer that was huge like in the early 2010s. And every Tuesday they would come out with this thing called Time Flies Tuesdays, where the producer would make a beat or some like mashup on a hit song, and they would put little topics on pieces of paper in a hat. And the guy, his name was Cal. He was like an amazing singer, super good looking, also really good at rapping and freestyling. And so every Tuesday they would drop this YouTube video, which was 5 to 10 minutes of him just like pulling the topics out and freestyling and singing. And in my college, when I was a freshman, this was really big. All the girls, every Tuesday at 8 p.m., all the girls would like go into one room and like fawn over this guy. And they would be like, oh my God, like Time Flies Tuesdays. And so my friends and I were like, how do we get the girls to come in our room? So I was like, all right, well, like, maybe I could just do that.
That's
yeah.
incredible.
So
all
I
right,
was
so
like,
like all great stories is started with a pure, and yeah, I don't even have to describe this before me going off the rails here, but it was just, that was the motivation. You're right. You were following your intuition is a nice way of putting it. But so tell me about, so that was the name. So I do remember, sorry, my bad on that, because I'm used to, your name is saved in my phone book as Kallaway, right? So like, I'll say, what's up, Kallaway? That's how we've always communicated. But I will say, so your handle on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is Kane Kallaway. So that's your middle name and your rapper name after. I think it's got a good ring to it with the double K.
Exactly.
Also, Kane is the name of one of my favorite rappers, Kano. His real name is Kane as well. So I've got extra affinity with that. But yeah, tell me about like sticking with Kallaway as a name though, because that is something that I think was intentional for you.
Yeah. So Kallaway became the rapper name, and yeah, like you said, I like the way it flows. It just sounds good to my ear. But really, when I thought about what I wanted to do, like when it comes to brand resonance, there's only so many people in the world that have one name recognition, right? So like Oprah, Prince, like you think about these people. If you say Michael, you think of Michael Jordan, even though he doesn't go by Michael, but it's like it's very rare to have a one name resonance brand and or a brand that resonates. Yeah, Kanye, exactly. So I was like, kind of early on, I was like, I want one of those because it's just easier to remember one name than two. It's easier to associate one name than two. And so when I was, I didn't specifically pick Kallaway because of that, but as I started to grow and use it and people started to call me that, I was like, okay, well, this is perfect. It could become this kind of platform as a one name brand. And so everything I did was kind of under this Kallaway name. The other reason was my rapping was definitely not PG, and I didn't want to get fired from my job in the early days. So I was like, I kind of want a separate alias online that nobody in my company could find. But as I started doing that, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool to have like this split kind of personality where I can really truly be myself under this Kallaway brand and like hide in the corporate world under, my government name. So
yeah.
So then I was like, okay, it'd be cool to have this kind of single name brand. And as I grew and grew and grew, it just made a lot of sense. And then I added the Kane. Kane's my actual middle name, and I added that just because most platforms didn't allow me to just have one name. Like it was like the first name, last name field. You had to enter something, and so I couldn't get around it with like a space or something. And so that's why I started going by Kane Kallaway for all these handles.
That's incredible. All right, love that. So that now let's fast forward a little bit because we could probably be talking all day about leaving corporate. We'll probably touch on that a little bit later. But did I paint an accurate picture of what you're doing today? So I talked about a short form video. That's what's really been popping off in my feeds. And I think for me anyway, it looked like more TikTok first and then Instagram Reels, but correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
Yeah, it was. I think TikTok blew up first, but I was posting content on both at the same time.
Okay.
But I can go through like my thinking of how I got there, because I think it's instructive for people who are thinking about what to do.
Yeah, we're going to do a whole deep dive on that process, thinking about it. If you're starting today from scratch, what you'd recommend as well. But let's talk a little bit about the bigger vision first, because then we can drill down to something that you're working towards, kind of like your North Star. In our text, you said something about Wavy Labs and your kind of longer term vision. So you said something along the lines of building $100 million portfolio of businesses. This is your blue sky, decade-long vision as a creator and how you want to get to that level. So first of all, is that accurate? Is that your longer-term vision? And if so, talk to me about how you got to that.
Yeah, that's the plan. So the idea is, so Wavy Labs is kind of my holdco, or like the company that incubates everything I do. And so my dream, I think it's helpful for a lot of people when you're starting out to really visualize and if all things break right, what do you want that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what do you want that to look like? And for me, I have so many different interests, and I really gravitate towards consumer brands. And so this idea of having a holdco of a couple different brands, maybe ideally I wouldn't operate all of them or potentially even any of them, but like own and operated consumer brands. But the key is there's a nucleus in the middle, which is my audience that I own, so that the distribution for those brands is either free or like significantly discounted. And that's the idea, is like, build an engine with the audience, so it's like a bike wheel that's in the middle, and then each spoke is kind of like a company that I own, operate, have influence over. And this isn't like a novel idea, right? There's a bunch of people that have these like holdcos, but I think from what I've heard, a lot of them didn't necessarily have that vision from day one. They kind of like grew into it. They started with one thing and then started adding pieces on. So I'm trying to be super intentional about every decision I make with like decade-long view. How do we build this kind of like holdco where the businesses feed each other?
Yeah, and I love your summary. I think this was off Twitter. Maybe you've got this in your other bios too, but you said chasing peak interest in across new tech and cult brands. I think if anyone's ever created something on the internet, and actually, sorry, one other thing, the holdco is incubating ideas at intersection of culture, lifestyle, and emerging technology. And that seems super straightforward and simple, but I'm sure that took you hours and hours, if not days and weeks to get to, because I've done this myself. Anyone who's, got a lot of interest, one of the hardest things to do is get to a summary and like that one line of this is what I'm focused on, because often you're thinking of all the thousands of things that are part of that, and you're like, well, no, I need to shoehorn that into that bio. I need to shoehorn that into the summary. So how do you, well, first of all, is that accurate? And two, how do you think about actually getting to that vision? Because a lot of the time but I'll just use myself as an example. I love Arsenal football. I could talk about Arsenal all day and watch it all day. Then I've got the creator stuff, podcasting. I've got the business consultancy stuff I've got a bunch of other interests with health and other stuff. And it's quite hard sometimes to encapsulate all those things. So I'm curious, how did you think about that? Because I think we're both similar in that way.
Yeah, this is where I feel like I disagree with a lot of the conventional stuff online, right? Which is this idea of like the niche. So most people will say when you're starting out, like pick one thing, be known, be like that guy or girl for that one thing, obsessively post about that one thing, grow a following of, medium to large size following about that thing, and then you can expand later, basically. And I think in theory that makes a lot of sense, but for someone like me and you, like, it's just not fun for me to be so laser focused on one thing when I have other interests that I care about. And so instead, I kind of think of this idea of like niches are N=1, right? So it's like my unique combination of interests and the perspective I have on those interests, nobody else is the same in the world. And if I can be super authentic to that and share, it might take me longer to grow initially because it's harder to find kind of like an audience for each one of those if you're not doubling, tripling down on the compounding of each one. But to me, you'll build more authentic fandom and like more authentic, community following audience, whichever path you take, by being yourself across the interests you care about than just being so laser focused on one. To me, it just doesn't feel intuitive to cut out the other things in my life that I'm interested in just to be laser focused on one thing. So I know people may disagree, and I know there's a lot of like conventional wisdom online about that, but that's kind of how I think about it.
No, I think that's a really nice way to put it. And I've heard other people mention this phrase, personal monopoly, is kind of an interesting idea for that, where, the ideas you said there, like even, let's say your lens of, let's say Web3, which I know you were interested in, still probably are interested in, but you also brought this authentic love of lifestyle, music, like probably fashion, like there's things that overlap there that when you were building in that space, you were trying to bring that intersection together. And then similarly, I guess the question is, we should probably describe for people who haven't seen your videos. First of all, everyone should go follow you on both Instagram, TikTok, and everywhere else. Sign up for espressoletter.com as well. But the one that I would say, if you're starting off, the one I would normally recommend is go to the short form, right? Because that is the first one. You can go and watch a 1-minute video of yours and you'll understand the sort of stuff you're covering. So what are the sorts of videos that you're creating for people, and how do you think about the topics you're discussing there?
Yeah, so I keep saying like the new tech and cult brands across all the profiles, that's kind of where I'm trying to plant the flag. And the beauty of that to me is that it's broad enough where it can kind of like bob and weave across multiple industries, but it's narrow enough where you know what you're getting. Like I can summarize it in one sentence, like you said, and it took a long time to get there. So the way I think about how I want my content to evolve is I want to be one of the 5 to 10 most trusted sources in the world for what I call breaking brands. So like when you hear like a newscaster be like breaking news and they're like one of the people that covers the story first, I want to be the guy that breaks brands across tech and I say like cult brands, but like the things I care about, wellness, CPG, travel, like these kind of domains that I care about. And so when I think about what kind of videos do I make, it's really like what authentically grabs me, and then how can I storytell that with my own fresh perspective in a way that people may not have heard before. And I want to be trusted. So like I do lean a little optimistic, I would say. Like I'm kind of like Packy in that way, where like every time I read a Packy piece, I'm like, this is amazing information, but he's definitely like an optimist. I'm the same way, but I want to try to be like as objective, entertaining, and like helpful as possible in covering that story. So that's kind of how I've thought about what videos do I make and like how do I approach the storytelling piece.
Got it. And I will say, just for our English listeners, that's Packy McCormack. Yeah, so he's a writer, not boring. The reason I say that is I had him on Not Investment Advice, the other pod, with Trung and Jack. And I don't know if you know, but there's another word like Packy, but another spelling in the UK is kind of like a negative word for someone who looks like me. And I had literally 4 people text me, be like, hey, every time I listen to him, you say his name, I got confused. And I was like, look, man, I get it. I'm the same. But just for our English lessons, I'm going to shout that out. But anyway,
yeah,
so,
good call.
no stress. But yeah, so he's also got a great newsletter, by the way. People should go check that out if they're not already signed up. So let's talk a bit about like how you got started on, you mentioned those other kind of things you were doing previously, but then you kind of were experimenting, it looks like, with the TikTok side first, and short form video. That's going to be the deep dive we're really going to go into today. So tell me about like starting on there, and I guess the lens we should probably look at this with is less so like what you might have done that worked in the past, and if you were recommending to your 21-year-old young brother or someone who's starting right now on TikTok, what would be your recommendation for all the things we're going to go through. So I guess the first starting point is what you're going to talk about, which you've already kind of discussed. What are the other things you're starting to think about when you're saying, I'm going to go and try this TikTok thing out? Like, what does that look like to you?
So the reason I went down this path was, like you said, I tried a bunch of different things over a few years, Morning Brew for Wellness, whatever. We can go through each of them if we need to, but the common theme as I zoom back, I had like varying degrees of success. Nothing was a breakout success enough to keep going, right? So they all failed. You might as well be direct, like they all failed. But when I zoomed out, the common theme was I didn't have distribution. So like my audiences were so small that anything I launched, even if it was the best thing in the world, you either have people that organically find it because you have an audience, or you have to pay to run ads to get people to find it. There is one of the two. And in the stages those things were in, I didn't really have the financial backing or conviction, I would say, to dump a bunch of money into paid ads to try to get people to convert, because I was still in that experimental phase. So what I realized is like time after time after time, I'm building a skill each time, and I'm confident in like the idea in the market, but I don't have distribution. So I thought, why don't I just go build the distribution first? And then once I have the distribution, I can like listen to what that audience community is telling me to do and build there. But even if I have my own intuition, I'll have embedded distribution. It becomes much easier to actually get feedback and then grow a business, which sounds like intuitive, but in the moment, I just was so frustrated about like, why is this not working? Why is it not working? Why does no one care about this? And it's because I had no audience. So that's kind of what got me down the path of like, okay, build distribution is objective number one. And now I can talk about, because I think I just made a YouTube video about this. I haven't posted it yet, but so we'll get the exclusive on Creator Lab, is the framework I thought I went through to figure out like, okay, how do I go about gaining that distribution? I ended up going short form, which we'll get into in depth, but like first step was like realizing, okay, I need distribution before I do anything else. And then
you got to decide first. Yeah, because that's like because a lot of the time you can jump to the tactics, which is, I'm going to go short form. I'm going to add captions. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. But you have to have that true kind of conviction first. That the reason I'm doing this is because of this bigger plan, and I'm going to start going hard at it. So now let's say someone's decided they internalize that idea. We're going to actually parallel our draw here is the health stuff we might talk about later. Similar for me, and I know you've gone through your own health transformation. Everyone knows how to get healthier in air quotes, but until you fully commit and actually say, well, what I've been doing in the past isn't good enough. Like I need to take this up a notch and truly commit to it. I've found that for me as well. Like with anything I've done, there's a clear, you might not have a clear vision exactly of everything you're going to do, but you have a clear conviction that I'm focused on this 100%, and then you can go all out. So let's say someone's got to that stage, they've got a topic they want to talk about. They might not necessarily even want to build $100 million portfolio of companies, but they want to do something on, let's say, TikTok or Instagram Reels for short form video. First of all, let's talk about why short form video. Out of, there's email newsletters, there's podcasts, you've tried that. There's YouTube, there's blogging. So why short form video?
Yeah, exactly. So that the next step is basically, 4 categories: text, audio, image, video. Those are like the 4 ways. And I guess before we go into that, when we say distribution, it's just building an audience so that if you distribute a message, it gets in front of people for free. That's when I kind of say, like, I need to build distribution. So you have 4 options to build distribution. Like we said, text, audio, image, video. So each one of those has pros and cons. And I kind of went through that list. I tried a bunch of different ones, but I went through that list. And the short version of it basically is text. You can either go longer form like email newsletters and blogs, or kind of shorter form like on Twitter. So the benefit of text is super high CPMs with email and blog. So that's awesome. You can get $50 to $100 CPM. So for every 1,000 people. And
that's for sponsors and ads, right? So for people who don't know, that's
exactly.
You'll be able to sell that for cost per 1,000 impressions. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll that's a good call. I'll break it down as we go. So like if you have 10,000 subscribers and you're getting $100 CPM, that means every time you send the email, you can get $1,000 from an advertiser, which is pretty good. So that's a benefit of email and blog. Another benefit is with email, you own the subscribers. So if you use Beehive, shout out the Beehive squad, Tyler Dank. If you use Beehive and they shut down tomorrow, which they never would, but if they did, you can pull that email list and go somewhere else, right? Versus you have platform risk everywhere else. If Instagram shuts down tomorrow, I lose my entire following. I have no way of getting those people back. So there's some pros with text. The con is you have to be a good writer. There's kind of like no way around that. If you don't like writing or you don't like the process of writing, then it's probably not going to work. So that's kind of analyzing text. And do you want me to keep going through all 4 if it's helpful to?
Yeah, that's cool. I love the way you summarized that already. So let's go for each one.
Yeah,
and one wrinkle I will add on. We've talked about this on the pod before, but that what you described there, the newsletter, but people might hear that called as an owned audience. So you own it fully, and a lot of social you might say is like a rented audience. So we can come back to that, but that was the only thing to add on newsletter specifically.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction. And the other thing for text is the growth potential, right? So email and blog on its own is kind of hard to grow because there's no discovery mechanism by itself. So like if you're just starting a blog and you write, 10 best recipes for this, you're kind of relying on Google SEO, Google search to surface that. So inherently alone, it's not really good at growing automatically. There's no algorithmic feed. But if you pair that with something like Twitter or LinkedIn or Threads, another like short form text medium, those have algorithmic feeds, which can provide this kind of embedded growth. So that's why in that bucket, you see a lot of people do Twitter and email newsletter, where they use Twitter as the growth engine to surface their ideas and surface their newsletter, and then they monetize pretty heavily. So that's one box. Box number 2 is images. So this would be like just posting, landscape pics, or if you're a model, like model pics on Instagram or Instagram stories, or like maybe even Snapchat. So with images, this is probably the worst bucket to start with if you don't have a following, only because Instagram doesn't really prioritize image-only content anymore. So you're not getting kind of a huge boost on the growth side from the algorithm. And from a monetization perspective, unless you're one of the top photographers or top models, you're not getting paid a ton per post or with advertisers. Just the money isn't there. So like in the graph of best to worst with the 2x2, images is not the best. So I would say, like, let's not start with image.
So I'm grinning because you can see the consultant side coming out of you. You're describing a matrix right now, which I love. So Just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's image. So that's box number, that's type number 2. So number 3 is audio. So that if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it's like pure audio, although Bilal does video as well. So let's just imagine you had a podcast where it was just audio, no video. So the benefit of audio is you can probably build the most depth with the audience. And when you build depth, you build trust. And when you build trust, advertisers will pay a lot to get in front of a trusted audience. And also you could sell other products, courses, businesses to the audience easier because, you know, Bilal's in your ears for an hour and a half every single week. So that's the best pro of it. The con of audio is it is the worst to grow organically. There's just no
it's
discovery
all word
mechanism.
of mouth. It's literally all word. And it's the hardest ask. You're asking someone to listen to an hour or at least 10 minutes or something of a podcast. And that's traditionally why there's a smaller audience size on podcasts versus a lot of the others.
Exactly. So if you're starting from scratch, the only way you should start the only way you should start in the audio category is if A, you're willing to wait a decade with no results, and you truly are, or B, you have an existing audience on one of these other buckets that you can funnel to kind of get a quick start. So it's kind of one of those two. You know, it's like a really good medium to train. Of course, like we both did it. You're still doing this podcast. I'm gonna hopefully launch another podcast soon. But it's an amazing medium to train, an amazing medium to build depth. It's just so hard to grow if that's the only thing you're doing. So that's that bucket, and then that brings us to video. So video is the fourth, and there's 2 types of video. You've got short form, so like TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts, and you can post short form other places now. And then you've got what I call like medium form, long form, which is just normal YouTube videos. So video is extremely powerful, and probably the medium to long form on YouTube is probably the best bang for buck in terms of you can get good monetization pretty quickly through YouTube AdSense or sponsorships, but also they have an algorithmic feed where they're surfacing you in front of strangers that have never heard of you before so that you can grow, you know, maybe not as fast as short form, but you can grow. So when you start looking at video,
there's the depth, right? And there's the depth that you get on a podcast, you kind of get in a 10-minute video. Like if you're spending time with that person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's medium forms. Then there's short form, which is what you're trading off in depth. You're not really getting as much depth. You're gaining in discoverability because the algorithms are super tuned, and the most attention in the world right now is on short form content, TikTok, Reels. So when you think about, and I think it was helpful to go through that, when you think about the backdrop, that's how I thought about it. I was like, okay, probably the best places to start, given my skill set, is either email or short form video. And then when I looked at email, I was like, well, I don't really have an audience on Twitter, so it's gonna be hard to drive people to my email. So that's gonna grow pretty slow. So for me, if what I want is to be able to prove that I can make videos that stick and storytell, that was like really important to me, is build that skill set. Short form video is the best place to start because it's the most ruthless marketplace. Like you can only hold someone's attention for 3 seconds if you're making average content. So in order to hold someone's attention for a long time, you got to be really good. And that my thinking was that would sharpen my skills of storytelling the quickest. And maybe I wouldn't be able to build depth through there. Maybe I wouldn't be able to monetize as highly through short form video, but it would give me a platform to kind of build these other channels.
Love that. That's an incredible breakdown. And I think even like I've thought about this a lot, as much as you have probably, but the way you summarize with image, video, audio, and text, that's a nice breakdown of that. So now you've decided short form video. So the king of that at the time especially was TikTok. Sorry, there's someone playing some Rasta music outside, but we'll keep that in. We're in Brooklyn, man. So, but yeah, so basically, what was I going to say? So TikTok is the granddaddy of it all. Now, let's talk about how you actually start on there, because are you making, you're very thoughtful in picking that, but now is it a matter of saying, what are these topics going to be like? Am I going to draft out 10 videos I'm going to make? What's the style going to be like? I'm just curious what went through your mind and actually how that translated into action, and what were the first 10 videos like for you, and how did you get to taking that from your head to on paper?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, more or less like into Premiere and out of my head into Premiere and then onto the feed. So there's like a 3-step process to go through here. So the first step is, what do I make videos about? That's the very first. And I think for most people, this causes analysis paralysis because they see people that make dope content and they're like, I want to make dope content, but their current skills are not able to execute on the visual they see. I think I don't know if there's a name for this. I call it the artist dilemma, where it's like I'm here. Like, let's say I'm a 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 10 in terms of skills. I want to be an 8 out of 10. I know there's a gap there, but I don't know how to close that gap. So it's frustrating. So a lot of people get into this analysis paralysis. What I say is any kind of content it takes so much time, dedication, patience. It's so hard to stick with it that if you're not making content about a topic you actually care about, like for real actually care about, you will quit and churn. And the only way to succeed in making content is to stick with it long enough to start seeing the benefits and the synchronicities start happening. So what you need to do, what I think the first step is, before you get down at the computer and start filming, I had a name for this that I'm forgetting, but basically open a note on your phone and just observe the kind of things that you think about and you talk about and you find yourself consuming over like a week or two, and just write those down. So because what ends up happening is if you sit down with a pad of paper and you're like, what do I make videos about? You'll bias your thinking towards either what I could make money about or like the last thing that you just consumed.
That's a great point.
So instead, you should just observe, I call it the silent observer. Just observe your life and the rabbit holes that you naturally go down. That's what you should write down on this list. And after a week or two, you can zoom back and look at that list and you'll see there's some themes here. Like for you, it's probably Arsenal football for sure is coming up, right? So
that's big on the word. What's that word cloud? If this was size as well.
Yeah, definitely. Arsenal's the big word in the middle. Yeah. So do that, and you'll come up with 3 to 4 buckets. Now, it doesn't matter if there's not an Alex Earl of that category, or there is. Like, it doesn't matter if there's someone making huge content about that niche, because it doesn't matter. You can grow your own niche. Again, niche N=1. It's about what will you not quit? What are you actually interested enough to research and make videos? So that's step number 1. For me, like, thankfully, what I actually care about and what I've been doing this whole time is like new tech and cult brands. So I really like when Apple or Google or Meta releases something cool, AI, Web3, like this cutting edge tech. And then I really love like Levels, Eat Sleep, like wellness tech brands, or like Fashion Kith. Like these are the brands that I just like authentically follow anyway. So I started writing that down, and that's step 1. So after you're there, and now you know you're making video, you know you have that topic, step I guess 2 is find other people on the medium. So if you're gonna make short form on TikTok or Reels that you really like. So for me, like Roberto Nixon's the homie. He makes sick video. His aesthetic is something that I aspire to. And so I'll like take him, write him down on a list. And so I go through and I find a couple people that are making videos, ideally in the same niche, but if they're not in the same niche, it's fine, that I like. I write those down and I kind of just watch what they're doing. And you can just take notes, and like pretty quickly after watching like 100 videos from these people, you can start to understand like, okay, the pacing is like this. The way they transition from sentence to sentence is like this. You know, you'll start to just pick up on these cues. And the key is don't spend months doing this, just like a couple days, because you got to get to the doing. You don't want to, freeze yourself out, but it's important to have like an aspirational model, because if you don't even know where you're starting and you have a 3 out of 10 skill set, it becomes really tough. So all that to say, then you got to get to a point where you just start shipping. Like if you go back to my feed and you go to the very bottom, my first videos are terrible. Like they're so bad, but the reality is nobody's going to care about you in the beginning anyway. And so there's some like peace in that where you're like trying so hard to get someone to care, but no one's caring anyway. So you can really just throw out a bunch of different ideas. There's almost more pressure in having an audience than not. So that's what I tell people is like, short form, start with 25 videos. You can make one video in one day. For me, it takes 2 to 3 hours end to end. But if it takes you 4 to 5 hours, like if you're really serious about it, one video per day, 4 to 5 per week, go for 25 videos. That'll be like 6 weeks or so, 5 to 6 weeks. When you get to the end of those 25 videos, you will know if you like doing it or not. And if you don't like doing it, then I would say stop doing it, because you're going to churn anyway. And if you don't like doing it, go back to that growth matrix that we talked about before with the 4 categories, and go find a different category and a different niche combination that you actually like doing more. That's kind of like something people overlook, is they start making videos and they don't grow, and they're like, why don't I like this? Or why am I not good at this? It's because they actually don't like it, So I can keep going if you want.
No, this is fantastic. And just to let people know, like I have on my left side of my screen, I have obviously notes that I've prepared, and I used to always do this in person. You'd see me jotting down like crazy. I finally moved to only digital, and I rarely would actually write notes that I'm going to use myself. And I literally just opened a little part at the end of this, and I was writing the stuff you wrote there, because it sounds so obvious, but it's a really, it's like a perfect like 1, 2, 3 step of being thoughtful, but also attacking it with, with time constraints as well, which I appreciate. So, and just to clarify, you said 25 videos, but basically one a day, you said, right?
Yeah, what I try to do is one every weekday. And so most weeks I would put out 5. Sometimes it was like 4. So
is
4
that
to
the
5
schedule
per week.
Still on now?
Yeah, right now I'm trying to do 4 to 5 shorts every week.
Wow. Okay.
And the good thing is you can make one short, which could be 30 to 60 seconds, and you could post that on every platform, which you should definitely post on every platform. And different video, like the same video will have different levels of virality on different platforms. So you know if you got a good one, if it goes viral on multiple platforms, right? But
yeah,
you'll grow on TikTok with this one and it won't go on Instagram and vice versa.
Beautiful. Yeah, so that's super helpful. Now, let's say you've got, you've done that notepad exercise, you've started writing out a few of the concepts. Now, let's go into the day. It's your Monday, you're starting the week. Or let's just start on a Tuesday, because a lot of people don't like starting Mondays. They're putting it off. It's fine. Let's be nice to the people. Tuesday, next week, it's after a nice long weekend for yourself. You're ready to do it. You're going to aim for 4 this week. And if a bonus, you just bang one out on the weekend as well. Tuesday, talk to me about your waking up. What is that looking like to actually attack that? You said 4 or 5 hours. I'm sure you've got it down now to 2, 3, but originally I'm sure it was taking you the full day. So what does that actually look like? Because when people see the video, they can see it's really well edited. Got the overlays, the subtitles, everything, captions. But that's like a minute long video, right? 30 to 60 seconds. So
yeah,
what goes into that? Because I'm sure you've written some sort of script. You've got a title that you're thinking of like, this is the topic I'm discussing. Then you're doing the research. So, guy, could you give me an example or a couple of examples of what that would look like in practice?
Yeah, I'll go through the full process, the full day. So one thing too is some people, they say to batch create. So let's say they make 4 videos in a week. They're like, okay, I'm going to pick 1 day per week. I'm going to do all 4. I tried doing that, but it doesn't work for it. For me, I don't like that, because what happens is you're like, think of your creativity as like a candle with a wick, and you can either burn that candle super hot and focus on one thing for an hour, or you can like slowly burn that candle down for like 8 straight hours. For me, the best content is when you burn super hot on one thing, like you focus really, really hard on one thing. I can't, like, my creative spark it's snuffed out by the time I record the 3rd video. So if you're starting, like, you can batch come up with ideas, and once you start making videos, ideas will just come to you, but you can write ideas down whenever. But I would focus on only one thing at a time. Like, don't try to record multiple videos in a day. But that's just a quick general tip. So here's how my day typically works. So the whole thing, it's scan, filter, and make. It's like this 3-step thing. Everything I think, the consultant in me is like, everything I think of, I'm just like bucketing it. But so the first thing is scan. So it's like, if I care about new tech and cult brands, what I need to do is like create an information diet pipeline that is high quality, signal, or high quality stories, high quality ideas that are coming across to me in those domains. So I subscribe to a bunch of newsletters. On Twitter, I like curated the feed super tightly. And so every day I spend 30 to 60 minutes early in the day going through like what is happening. And my whole objective is write down anything that I find interesting. At first it was like, write down what I think will go viral, but that's not authentic to me. And so you start to deviate away from your N=1. So for me, it's like, what do I find interesting? And I'll read all the emails. I'll go through Twitter. Sometimes I'll go on YouTube, and you got to give yourself the fluidity and flexibility to actually find what's interesting. And so I'll do that, and I'll write those ideas down. And then at the beginning, I was like working until 1 or 2 p.m. And so like at 2 p.m. I would start, and I would make a video from like 2 to 6. So at 2, I would look at that list and I'd be like, what is the most interesting thing I saw today? And I'd pick the whatever it was, I'd pick that. I was like, I'm going to make a video about that. And so that's how I get to like, what's the idea?
That's the filter part, right? So scan was taking in interesting stuff, and the filter is, now let me hone in. That was the most interesting thing that I found that day.
Exactly. So we've scanned, we filtered down to 1. And like of that, maybe I took in 15 interesting things, and there are some things that would make for good videos that I might use later. So I'll keep those on a list, but whatever, you can only work on one thing at a time. So whatever the most interesting thing, ideally if it's timely. So like if Apple releases the Vision Pro, a video, and they do that on Monday, a video on Monday about the Vision Pro is going to do better than waiting 4 days. So there's multiple factors that can go into like your filtering process. But for me, it's like, what is most interesting to me? Is there anything that needs to go out today for it to be it's relevant, time relevance basically? And then I think those are like the two most important factors. So that's the filter. Then there's the make, right? So I'll take that one idea, I open a Google Doc, I have that at the top. And this is where kind of the art comes in of trying to put, for me, I look at it like it's a huge puzzle, right? I'm trying to put these pieces together of like, how can I tell a story about this idea or this topic in a way that's interesting to people? And so the first thing that I think about is you kind of need, I'll break down like the pieces to the script. It's not super, super robotic. Like some people try to really chunk every sentence, like there's my hook, there's my sub hook, I don't do it like that. It's more of like a fluid flow. But I will say every great video has kind of like some kind of hook or subject or like introduction to a problem, some kind of conflict that happens to the subject or to the company you're talking about, something that you weren't expecting, basically like a surprise, and then a resolution. Almost every good story has those three things. And so in my head, I've done this long enough.
Could you say those again? Because you mentioned the hook. I got the conflict, surprise, resolution. There was one in between. You said, sorry.
The first one is like the hook slash like subject.
Get
so it's
you
kind
in.
of like,
that's the first 3 seconds, right, in the video.
Exactly. And then
why you should care.
Why you should care, basically. And you want them to know what it's about, why you should care, and like start to craft a narrative around something. It could be a company, could be a person, but like some subject usually. Then the conflict, I like to put the conflict up as high as possible, because on most 60-second videos, if you look at the graph, you're losing 90% of people after 10 seconds. So you pretty much need to introduce the subject, give them context, and introduce the conflict all in the first 10 seconds, or else you're going to lose somebody. Once the conflict is introduced, people are kind of like, they're like, oh, what's going to happen? Like they're kind of on the edge of their seat, like, okay, I get it. Nike, like they were doing poorly. Their stock price was going down. So like pretty quickly they start to be like, what's going to happen to the stock price? And they're invested in the story. Then you can build more of the meat around kind of the resolution piece. So
that's great. Could we go into the conflict part a bit more? Because I think when people think of long form, storytelling, whether it's a movie, a book, even a short story that's 5-10 minutes long, you feel like there's more space for those different layers. And obviously you're being very thoughtful about squeezing that all into 60 seconds, which is incredibly difficult. So could you give a few more examples of each of those, like what that might look like, whether that's your videos or someone else's? So maybe we'll just start from what makes a good hook, what makes a good kind of like that context giving, and then the conflict, surprise, resolution. I don't know if that sounds too formulaic, but I'm just trying to look for examples that I could reference and maybe go and look at as well.
No, let's definitely do that. So I'm going to pull up I have one Google Doc with like all the scripts in it. So I'll pull that up. And by the way,
also, if you want to share your screen at any moment or reference any of your own videos or someone else's, you're welcome to do that. No, but you could also send them after or something like that.
Yeah, I'll send them after. Whatever ones we talk about, I'll send them after in a Google Doc, and then people can like look through them.
Perfect.
So let's take this example. So I made one about the Beatles were releasing a new song, like their final song ever, using AI. So obviously John Lennon died, but they had vocals on a tape that were kind of like shittily recorded, I guess, like in his room. The acoustics were not good, but they used AI to bring the clarity of the vocal back, and then they could actually put it into the studio recording. So that was the story. So when I made a video about it, the hook I used was, the Beatles are releasing a brand new song, their last one ever. But I thought John Lennon died in 1980. So just right there in those 2 seconds, it was like,
what's the
subject? Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait, I thought he died, right? So the conflict is immediately like circling in someone's brain. So you gave them the Beatles and a new song, which is kind of the hook and like the what's happening. And then you gave them the, wait, but how are they doing that? Because one of their band members is not there. So immediately I'm kind of putting their mind into a like, what's going to happen scenario.
Is that the conflict you're describing? Like the surprise, or is the surprise coming later?
So you can layer multiple conflicts depending on how complex the story is. For me, that was the main one. And then
there's a conflict in the brain there is like, oh, wait a minute, how's that? It doesn't make sense. Like where something's not adding up here. Now I want the answer. He's going to tell me. And then it's kind of like a joke as well. Like when you think of like stand-up comedians, there's the tension they create. There's a premise. as a setup, and then the release of the punchline is normally the answer to that conflict that's been made. Obviously, people don't think of it like that, but that's really interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's super easy to create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs. Add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Finding great talent is always at the top of the list for every entrepreneur I've had on this show, and they know that adding the right person can 10x their business, and many of them use LinkedIn Jobs for that. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs the #1 place in delivering high quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/creator. That's linkedin.com/creator to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
And the best comedians do that. They're like setting it up, but then their punchline is a misdirection a different way. So like not only does the punchline come, but it's a surprise. So what I found with these short form videos is like in a normal story, you have like the subject, the conflict, the resolution. You can take time to like build those up. In a normal book or like a normal YouTube video, you've got many minutes to kind of like add context. With short form, it's so quick and the attention is so fleeting that you have to introduce it fast. So for this script, what I did was I went subject, conflict, the first 2 lines, but then I gave more context about the subject and conflict later. So what I said was, but I thought he died in 1980. He did. Paul McCartney's using AI to bring him back. It's pretty wild. So that's like extra context on the subject. And then I said, so in 1978, Lennon secretly recorded a bunch of songs that were never shared. The problem is the recordings were done in his New York apartment on a boombox. So like that is basically adding more clarity to the conflict. But because it's short form, I had to introduce that conflict up top or else they would have never got to that point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Got it.
So,
Beautiful.
And then later, like I talk about like, oh, here's how they did it,
And then, the resolution is, that's the last part.
Yeah, so in this, I was like, meaning his vocals and his piano couldn't easily be separated, and the recording was super poor quality. The Beatles actually tried to work on this song in 1995, but it sounded so bad they had to shelve it, and that's where AI comes in. McCartney was able to use AI to isolate the vocals and restore them back to quality. The song's expected to come out next year. So that's kind of like the resolution at the end.
Love it. Man, that is beautiful. I've never heard anyone describe it in that detail, so very, very helpful. Just to make sure we're all super clear, and for people listening, banging their head against the wall saying, why are you asking again? Just want to be clear, it was like 4 words you used. You said hook, subject, context, conflict, surprise, resolution. Did I mess any of those up, or were they, like, if you were saying 4 bullet points, would those be the right ones?
If it's not short form, it's literally just like subject, conflict, resolution. But because it's short form, the hook is required at the beginning, and you almost always need to include the subject as part of the hook because you only have 5 seconds to catch them,
But so the hook is the subject in this case, but you need to do it in a way that's a hook. Like, and when at Google, there was a guy called Avinash, who's actually one of my first 20 episodes on the pod. He was kind of like the OG in web analytics, which sounds like the opposite of storytelling, but he was a masterful storyteller in his own way. And we would bring him into meetings with like the C-level of Gucci, and he would be like telling crazy stories and telling them their website shit and stuff like that. It's a really funny guy in like a little bit of an Indian accent. Is brilliant. And one of the things, we all got kind of trained by him, and he used to call it the BFD, the big fucking deal. And it was like up front, that was the hook. It was like you walk in a room, you got to capture the attention. Like you're telling them on a slideshow, this is why you're here today. And you got to fight. It would take hours sometimes going through their data, looking through the ad accounts, looking through analytics to find this one little piece of insight to say, this is why you're here today. We're going to help fix this. And it's normally like a problem or something. Obviously, that's like a sales context, very different. But I think what's interesting is the overlapping thread here is storytelling. It's all about and storytelling. And what you're doing is the hardest form, in my opinion, because it's, like you said, it's 60 seconds. So let's talk a little bit. That was incredible, very helpful. So you've got that.
And one more thing on there too that's really helpful. So like the more fleeting the attention, the better the hook has to be. So if you think about like Disney making Frozen, that attention's not fleeting at all. Like you're sitting down for a 2-hour movie, so they have no hook in that, right? There's no like scene at the beginning that's like Olaf falling off a mountain. It's like they start building the character and subject right away. There is no hook because you don't have to hook somebody when they're sitting down to watch a movie because they've committed. Versus like on the full other end of the spectrum are these short form videos or like a tweet. You got 1 sentence to hook somebody. These short form videos, you got 3 sentences because the attention is so fleeting. So that's a good like spectrum to look at it.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I found like you were tweeting quite a bit during the pandemic, and I know you still do. I feel like even for me, I don't write on there much at all anymore, but I was a little bit back in the day. And just that process of writing on there is actually such an incredible training because it's obviously the short form before they extended having like essays on Twitter. And I think that is like a lot of this comes back to writing, which is quite interesting because you described, audio, video, text, and what am I forgetting? There was a fourth one.
Audio, video, text, and images. The forgettable one.
Yeah, the forgettable one. Yeah. So, but interesting one. I find like everyone, I've interviewed so many people doing all sorts of creative stuff, and like the writing kind of comes back as this thread that even what you described, that was a written script, right? And it was organizing your thoughts in one place. And even for me, mine is like 2-hour long interviews, but I spend hours writing not a script, but I'm writing my thoughts and ideas based on the research I do. So I think that's something we can maybe come back to. So let's go back to scan, filter, make. Keep hitting me with the 3-4 combos. I love them. So nice. Any more of those are always helpful. So we got to the make. That was really an interesting way to describe it. So now you've written, well, let's talk about the actual script. You've got that kind of like that 3-4 piece of a story. What does that actually look like for you? I don't want to go too much into tools because I think it can be a bit of a distraction, but I am curious. Are you just really writing this in a notepad or a Google Doc, or what's it look like for you?
Yeah, it's literally just a Google Doc. I have one Google Doc with like 1,000 pages in it that's TikTok scripts, and I just like enter. Like I try not, because the key, what I found is the key to creativity is being able to decrease the amount of time between idea and output. So as soon as I identify like this will make a good video, start a timer. I want the shortest amount of time between that moment and the video being out. So if I have to like open up a new file and folder and save something separate and like get a template like that, maybe it's only 5 to 10 minutes, but it just adds more complexity versus the friction. Exactly. So here it's just one Google Doc. And one thing I wanted to say on the writing point, you're exactly right, which is the most valuable skill you can have as a pretty much anything for any discipline in life, I would say, maybe except like true paint, like visual art, is writing. Because everything always comes back down, like you keep reducing something down farther and farther and farther. The least common denominator of everything is writing. And so for me, what happens
organizes your thoughts.
Exactly. It organizes your thoughts, and like you're going to communicate something. Even on video, it's via words. Writing, it's obviously via words. Like when you sell somebody, when you email them, it's via words. Like everything is kind of like your communication style. So when I think about the actual script, though, one thing I wanted to mention, and I haven't heard anybody, I saw one tweet about this, which really connected, which was the rhythm of the words is just as important as the words you say, to me. And that goes back to like the rapping. So you want to mix like a medium sentence, a short sentence, a long, you want to mix it. So if you listen to my videos and you close your eyes, you don't watch them, but you listen, the cadence of my voice is that of not a song, but like I'm shifting the cadence so that it's adding more subconscious surprise, versus like if you read like a 10-word sentence and you had 10-word sentences over and over, the pacing it's too stale. So like, here's an example. This Messi, my most watched video of all time was this Messi video. It has like 30 million views across TikTok and Instagram. And the first 5 lines, Leo Messi just changed the business of sports forever. He said no to 1.7 billion. So like that first line was kind of medium. The second line was pretty quick. And then instead he signed one of the greatest sports deals of all time. That's another medium. And then now I do a long one. Over the weekend, Messi announced he was joining Inter Miami in the American Soccer League. And so I'm playing with the cadence because people can hear the inflection of your voice. And if it's predictable, it's boring. So that's like another like little subconscious hack is when you're writing, you shouldn't be able to look down the script and the end of every sentence is pretty much the same. It should be jagged like in and out, because that implies that you have like kind of different lengths and rhythms of the sentences. So that's kind of like a little bit of a deep one, but.
No, we're good. Yeah, no, that's a really great point. I was trying to look for, there was Sam Parr was on the show, who's, you know him, but he's the founder of The Hustle and MF, My First Million podcast. And we did a whole section on copywriting, and I was trying to find the way he described it, because it was, he's a great copywriter, and I think there's a rhythm with the way he had talked about copywriting, and he talked about like a slippery slope, which is slightly different. Actually, now I'm thinking of it, it's slightly different. That's about taking people down this path that you want to read the next line. It's slightly different when you're speaking. And you notice I did like spoken word poetry, right? I think we've talked about that in the past.
Yeah.
Not rapping, but there's some overlap, a lot of lyricism in there. And that is actually something I haven't noticed about myself, but when I read back my writing, there's a lot of that too. And some of my most successful writing, even on Twitter, the ones that popped, there was this kind of like jaggedy thing of like short sentence, long sentence, and you can take people through that rhythm. And I think that comes from your musical taste and your musical ability from before. So that's pretty cool to bring that in. So
it's like if you're boxing, you're not going to hit like hook. You're going to go like hook, jab, hook, jab. Like you're going to intermix different levels and like
it's not monotonous. Yeah, it's just like you're getting enough variety there, and it keeps you kind of engaged.
Exactly.
So and we're going to get into that with the actual visuals and the way you transition. I've noticed a lot of yours zoom in and out, like you're changing angle. I did that when I was going hard with the clips for Twitter before TikTok was really popping off. That was what eventually my editor did it, but she would, I like had very specific stuff where I'd say like every 3 seconds we need to change a frame, and I want to get your version of that in a minute. But so you've got I think we talked about the script, but just to finalize that part, like you've got it in a Google Doc, perfect, open it up. Are you thinking about how I'm going to say this, or are you just organizing your thoughts at that moment? I'm curious how it actually turns into, on a screen.
So the way I do it, when I used to rap, what I would do is like, I'd start the beat at the beginning. I'd write a little bit of the verse. I'd go back to the beginning and I'd like rap up until what I had, and I would keep going because I wanted to hear myself say it in the way I would say it. And so I'm doing the same thing with the videos where I'm writing the script, and the first line is the most important. It's the same thing as what Sam was saying, which is like first line, you got to get them to want to go to the second line. You got to get them to want to keep going down. So sometimes it just comes to me right away. Other times I'll write a first line and then I'll say it in like my video voice, which is just my normal voice, but like a little bit more expressive.
Yeah, so you got the head shaking. I know you got the little...
I got too much head movement.
No, it's all good. I like it, but go on,
So that's it. And I'm trying to like because I'm naturally very introverted and a little bit monotone. So I'm trying to bring myself in this energized state. And so I'll say the first sentence out loud at the pace that I think flows best. If it doesn't sound good to my ear, kill it, rewrite it. And like, I keep going. And so that's how I do it when I'm writing, is like, I'm both thinking about that kind of like hook, conflict resolution in the back of my mind. In the front of my mind is like, does this sound good to my ear? And does this get somebody to the next line, right? Does this make them interested? So I'm like constantly battling that. So I'm going, I'll write the first 2 lines, say it again, delete the second line, 2, 3. So sometimes it only takes me like 20 minutes to write. Sometimes it takes up to an hour, just depending on how complex a story is and how much I'm trying to weave in. But I'm always trying to get to like ideally 40 to 60 seconds length. I never want to make it longer than it has to be. But right now TikTok's paying 60 cents per 1,000 views on videos over a minute. So I'm like, I have an incentive now financially to try to make my videos longer than a minute.
So could you say that again? So because now what is the limit of TikTok? Because now that you get like 10-minute long videos, no?
Yeah. So at first I was like, it needs to be less than 60 seconds because on Snapchat and there's one other platform that, in YouTube Shorts, it's a max of 60 seconds. So I was like, all right, if I want to post on everywhere, let me just do like 50 to 59 seconds. But TikTok supports over a minute. Instagram Reels goes up to 1:30. Twitter's like 5 minutes. So really 1:30 is like the hard cap. But
and I think
TikTok...
on Twitter now, there's even longer. I think with Twitter Blue, I think they've got long form. Like we upload our whole podcast on there sometimes just to
nice.
test it out. But obviously no one's watching our video yet without background play. But But do you know actually what the limit is for TikTok though? Is it like 10 minutes or?
I think it's either 5 to 10, or it used to be 5 and now it's 10 or 15, but it's definitely longer than you need. So it's for short form.
Got it. And so just to compare that number, you said they're paying 60 cents per, what was the number you just said there?
Yeah. So and just to close, so Instagram Reels is 90 seconds. So that's kind of like, if you want to post on Instagram, 90 seconds is the fixed amount.
That's the upper end limit, yeah.
Yeah, so you can't go longer than 90 or else you're not going to be able to post it on Instagram. And so now, what TikTok came out with was, I think it's called their creator program. Let me look up the exact name. I think it's their beta creator program. And so any video longer than 60 seconds, because they want to incentivize longer videos. So if
they want to keep people on the platform, yeah.
Exactly. If you apply for the program, which I think, we'll look at the requirements. We can link them in the show notes. I think it's like as long as you have 5,000 or 10,000 followers. So it's definitely substantial. You have to have been posting, but it's not impossible to get to. As long as you have that amount of followers and you've applied to the program, any video over a minute, they're paying you for. And right now the CPMs are, I guess, like RPM. It's not even click.
Yeah, RPM
it's just like
equivalent.
The views. Yeah. Mine's about 60 cents per 1,000 views, which means if you get a video to go 1 million views on TikTok, which is, it's hard, but it's not that hard. That's $600. So that's pretty good especially for a platform that implicitly goes viral a lot.
Yeah.
So because of that,
what's the equivalent of below that? You don't get paid anything below that.
Yeah, you don't make anything. And like Instagram doesn't pay you anything for views. YouTube Shorts does pay for views, but I think it's less than that. So
yeah.
So really it's like, okay, if I was averaging like 8 to 10 million views a month, and I just started this program like 4 videos ago, so I don't know yet if it's going to be good or not, or if they're going to throttle my views down. But if, a couple grand a month based on what I was doing before is not bad. Like, that's no joke.
Definitely,
so now I'm kind of incentivized to tell the story a little bit like a minute, between 60 and 90 seconds.
That's
but the problem is
that's
contradicting with being concise, right? So like if I could tell the story in 30 seconds, is it worth me adding more fluff to get to 60? Like, maybe that will make the story worse.
That's the lever you're pulling out of. I want to get paid, but also I want to make the video that's going to keep growing my account. And, you're also trying to make the best content. Like, I know you're not just like pure, I need to make as much money as possible. Obviously, you care about money like anyone else, but I know you love the craft of it and making a good piece of work. So that's an interesting conflict there. Like, what about a 61-second video?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Slightly over, yeah.
So I don't actually know how long they're gonna be until I record them and chop them down. So, and we can get into like what happens after I write the script, but I kind of have a sense for like one page at 11 font on the Google Doc with like one line per whatever is about 60 seconds, and so I'm kind of shooting for that ish. But yeah, sometimes they come out and they're 54 seconds, and I'm like, well, I can't. What can I add?
You're not gonna add some music for the sake of it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
got you.
So yeah, that makes it tough. But one point on that is, I wonder if, so now YouTube's paying for views. They had been paying for medium form and long form views forever with AdSense, but now they're paying for shorts. TikTok's paying for shorts. I wonder if Instagram's going to be forced to start paying for some kind of views. And what I think is going to happen if they do that, because now Twitter's paying for views as well.
Yeah.
So if all the platforms start doing that, then what ends up happening is a lot more people will start making content because they're like, oh, I can get paid just on views. I don't have to do partnerships or whatever. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, that's an interesting evolution there. All right, so you just roughly, I don't know if you don't have to share a screen and share a script. If you want to do that, you're welcome to. But I'm just curious what one actually looks like in terms of like size, and for like a 60-second video, whether you want to describe that or whatever. But I'm just curious, like how, if I was aiming for a 60-second video, what that actually looks like in practice.
Yeah, let me get to this. Let me see if it will share easily.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that'd be even better. We're getting the real exclusive here. Behind the scenes look, Creator Lab style.
Okay, let me know.
Here we go.
Let me know if you can see can you see this Google Doc?
Wrong tab. No, I'm joking. No, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. That's always the fear.
That's the fear. This is an incognito window you open. No,
yeah.
All right. No, this is perfect. All right. So this is one video. And for people who are only listening, which again is most people, you can click the timestamp and watch on YouTube here to actually see the screenshot, because this is very helpful.
Yeah. So this is, and I don't know how it's showing because this is on my monitor. So this window might be a little bit longer than like a laptop screen. But for me, like on a normal 27-inch monitor, the window is about 2/3 long. And so you can see at, what is this? I think 11 font, it takes up about 1 page, right? So this is the video I just posted yesterday. So you can see how, like, see what I'm saying? How
do you know how many words that is? Do you mind just, I'm just curious roughly. So it is 227 words. It's pretty, pretty short, which is, so yeah, and it literally looks like if I wasn't reading it, it could be poetry, right? Like the style, like you were saying about short line, long line, like the ... So got it. Okay. And so when you originally write this, do you think this was way longer and you had to cut it down? I'm just curious what that might have looked like originally.
This was probably pretty close to like what the first take was, more or less. Because I try to, basically I'll write it how I think it is most interesting. And then if I record something that I don't need, I'll just cut it out of the, in the video. So I try to record a little bit more, like a couple filler things, just in a couple extra details. But yeah, so the reason why everything is like a short sentence is actually because of the recording process, which I can explain like why that's helpful.
Let's get to that. So now you've got this script. What does this actually look like when you're, all right, go on.
So here's what happens after this, right? So I write the script, and then, so I don't have a teleprompter. I just bought one. So hopefully that'll speed up the workflow. But basically, in order to record this, and I can talk about just quickly like the setup so people who can actually like tactically action on this. So I have a Sony A7 III, which is more camera than you need. I just like had that camera, but any DSLR would work. You can probably even do this with the webcam. I just have that above my screen. And what I do is I connect that to my computer using the Elgato Camlink 4K, which is just a capture card. And you can just put an HDMI cord from the camera into the 4K, into the Elgato. And then I just plug that into my computer. And I'm actually recording into Riverside, believe it or not. So like instead of recording on a memory card, because I don't want to keep reaching behind I like where the camera is. And every time I try to take the memory card out, I like adjust it and it's annoying. So instead of having to take the memory card out, I'm just capturing the video on Riverside as if it was like a podcast, but it's just me alone.
I had no idea. That's funny. So you don't even just record on your like desktop, like an app or something like that. Like you can even record in QuickTime or something, or there's like the streamer. Is it what's it called?
OBS.
OBS. Yeah. Have you ever tried using those?
I probably should be using those. Like I think so. Riverside, sometimes like it won't load quickly. So after I'm done recording, it takes like a minute or two, which is a little bit laggy, or 10 minutes, whatever. But I'm gonna fix the.
But if it's working, you don't need to mess it up. Yeah, that's
exactly.
All good.
There's a lot of ways to do it. Like you can record straight to the memory card. You could get a monitor that actually shows, what you're seeing in the camera, but that actually records like the Atomos. So, or you could do QuickTime OBS. There's a bunch of ways, but for me right now, I'm just doing it into Riverside. And then for the microphone, I don't particularly love the look on short form when you have the big Shure in front of your face. For Roberto, it looks really good, and he has a perfect length, like frame, so it doesn't take up too much in front of his face, but it looks really natural. For me, like I don't know, it's too big based on my setup. It's too much of the screen.
Yeah.
So I don't like that.
So do you have like a lav mic or something, or what do you do there?
So instead, I use this, which is the DJI Wireless Go, and basically there's two of them. So this is what one of them looks like, and itself is a mic. You could put a lav in this if you want. So I have a lav, but it was causing a lot of feedback on my hoodie when I would move around. So for this, I kind of just hold it towards the bottom of the screen.
I've seen
Most
that in
of the
your
time,
videos. Yeah.
I don't love how it looks, to be honest, with the holding it. I'd rather have a mic just at a screen above, or use the lav that you can't see. But for me, like, again, I'm trying to reduce the time from idea to output. And like every time I fiddle with something else and it doesn't work and I have to re-record it, I get frustrated. So I know that I have this process that works. And so what I'll do is I'll start it on Riverside. I'll have that microphone in my hand. I'll start the microphone. And then I go line by line, and I kind of do it 2 to 3 times. Ideally, it would just be once, but with the microphone, I sometimes get those plosives, like the feedback in the microphone where it's unusable. So, for example, the video yesterday, the first line is like, "Can you imagine a world where Nike was losing?" So I'll be like, "Can you imagine a world where Nike was losing?" And then I'll say it again, like a little bit different. "Can you imagine a world where Nike was losing?" Like I'll just like do it a couple of different times.
You're so well trained. Just see you switch looking into the camera there. No, you've done this a few times, man.
Yeah, that's the key. Yeah, that's the key. You got to look into the camera. But so I'll do that, and then. And hopefully this is helpful. I'm going into like really big detail.
I think this is super helpful, because I think a lot of the time people talk about like very high level stuff, which we did, but we're also going into the actual nuts and bolts of how you actually make this a reality. And I think it's, so if people don't like that, they can skip ahead or, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
but I'm finding it useful. So I'm sure
Perfect.
other people will too.
So I'll do that line by line. Usually it takes like 6 to 10 minutes to record what will end up being a 1 minute thing. And that's just because I'm doing multiple takes and I'm like, you know, just I have to read and like memorize the line. That's why the sentences are so short, both for the choppiness, but also like if I had 3 sentences that were choppy, I don't want to put them without spaces because I can't memorize 3 sentences in a row. So I kind of just do one at a time. And so I'll go through that. It'll be 6 to 10 minutes. I'll end it. I'll put it in Premiere. And Premiere is where the magic happens, right? So I first thing I do is I chop down all of the clips. And so I've got a couple shortcut keys in Premiere that are super easy, but it saves some time. Instead of you having to go like chop, manually remove, and manually drag over, there's some shortcut keys that you can use in Premiere that I'll send you a video that people can set
that's
those
helpful.
up.
So just to clarify, so because by the time you record, this is one long video recording of you saying the whole thing. And so what, does it recognize there's like space in between or something?
No, it's just like I can see where there's no waveform. And so I have to manually go through and chop out the space.
You press it. Okay. Got it. Okay.
And so I've gotten it down to where it's just a couple keys to be like, wherever there's no recording, like press it, moves it over, press it, moves it over. And I go through. So it could take like, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes to go through and chop out all the empty space.
Curious, have you ever used Descript for video editing? Because there's
I've tried.
It might not work because you're already going to do it in Premiere, but I think for like when I do sponsor reads, I'll do like a long thing, and sometimes you mess up, so you keep recording, and there's a tool in there where you can basically get rid of gaps or like longer than a second long. So if you were between those things, you could like leave a second in between, and then it just automatically kind of takes them all out for you, which is nice. But if it's quick in Premiere, then you don't need to do that.
That I should probably try that. And I think Premiere will probably come out with like AI tools that can auto identify, like where the gap is. For now, I'm doing it manually because in short form, the transition between sentences is so important. Like a matter of just one frame, I can tell in my ear it's too slow. So even if I had something automatically do it, I'd probably still have to go through and like fine tune it. But so I go through, and basically what that leaves me with is 3 to 4 good takes of every line, or however many I did. Anytime I like mess up or there's a plosive or like a sound that I don't want, I'll just delete that take. So I have all these takes, and then I'll go through the whole thing again and be like, what's my favorite take out of all of them? And I'm looking for like the way I'm sounding, the way my face looks. Like if there's too much of this like head movement, I have to delete it because I just get clowned in the comments when my head's like moving too far, too fast.
It's so good. I know what you're saying, but I want to come back to that in a second as well about dealing with one, haters, but 2, looking at yourself on screen, listening to yourself, because that's something a lot of people deal with. So we'll come back to that in a second.
Yeah. So I go through that and I'll make this quick, this process. But so I basically pick the best take of each sentence, and then I go through like with more of a fine tooth comb, and I'm kind of like removing one frame here or there, adding it, just so the flow it's faster than a conversation, but it's slower than like boom, 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 boom. It's like allows you to digest what I'm saying. And I think there's a fine line there, which if you want to practice, you can go to one of my videos and you can just watch it, and you can literally take a timer if you want and like time each sentence, or you can just like kind of get the feel for the flow. Roberto does this well too, where like it's just a good flow, almost like conversational flow, but a little bit faster. And so I go through there, and basically
this is called like pacing, right? This is like pacing of the video.
And that's a little bit more art than science. There's no like finite amount of frames with silence that it needs to be. It's kind of just like what's good to your ear. And the more you do it, the more trained you'll be, and you'll start to kind of like make it tighter. And so at this point, what I'm left with is the best take for every sentence. And then I'll know exactly how long the video is going to be. So at this time I can see, is it 1:02? Is it 52 like seconds? Cause you can tell. And this is where all that entire process up to here probably took an hour and a half, maybe an hour. That's not the meat of it. The meat of it comes next, which is...
So that is including the writing the script as well?
Yeah. So most scripts I can do in like 20, 30 minutes. I can record in like 10 to 15 minutes. I can chop it in 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So
did that take you that long originally, or you've just got it down?
The script part definitely is a learned art to like go fast with it. The recording itself, if you're going to do a couple takes per line, it should be about the same. The chopping it down, I was doing it manually before, which that took a while, but now I got the shortcut keys. You can like go pretty quickly through the timeline.
Got it. Okay.
So next is where the magic is, right? Which is the zooms, the cuts, all that.
The real edit, yeah.
Yeah, the real edits. And to be fair, I did not know how to video edit when I started. Zero. Like I had never opened Premiere. Any podcast video I'd ever had, I had an editor do it. I had not touched Premiere. So like you can do it. Anybody who's listening can figure it out because I never did it. And you can see my videos now, like they're pretty quick and there's like a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. I was surprised you were doing it yourself because I texted you and said, oh, using is an editor helping you? Using CapCut? Because I want to ask you about CapCut because I don't know much about it. I don't really. And you're like, no, it's all in Premiere. So I use Final Cut Pro and I do have an editor nowadays. But for something like this, normally what I've done in the past, like with Creator Lab, is I learned the editing up front because I wanted to know the ins and outs of what makes something sound good. And then later video, I was like curious about that. But short form is so much more editing that if I ever did this, I would probably want to try it out myself for a while. And then I would know in more detail, even if I was getting help from an editor, like the craft of it is really the edit in short form, I think.
It's really important, I think, with any skill that you learn how to do it first yourself, because then you'll know, no one's going to care about your thing more than you. And so even if you pay an editor, they're like the little details that they're not paid to look at, they won't, because you wouldn't if you were getting paid and it's not your thing, but you will care about that. So I find that anything I've taken the time to learn the craft, it's fine to outsource that craft once you realize like your time is better spent elsewhere, but like you really should be spending the time. So with video, I find editing, knowing at least a little bit is helpful. And so what I do is, so you'll notice in my videos that I've got the full screen shot, which is kind of me on the entire phone. And then I've got the half screen shot, which is the bottom half of the screen is me and the top half is some video. And so what I found was, if you look at my videos, the first probably 50 I made.
And they're all vertical, obviously, right? Sorry, just to clarify, because this is interesting. Because your view right now, if you're watching this is a normal, wide, like a landscape view. So when you're actually recording, it's just your face pretty much. You've got a little bit of the background.
I am recording basically I'm recording the landscape view and I crop it in.
So you then take it into Premiere and basically, what is it, like 1920 versus by 1080?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you record vertically, you have no real estate to zoom out. So like my shots that are split screen, I need most of this room. Like the ones that are tight is like this much, but the ones that are split screen are like this much. So if I recorded vertically, I wouldn't have this extra room over here, which if you're watching video, this makes sense. If you're listening,
I got you.
I recommend recording horizontally so that you have room when you're starting, so that you have room to punch in and move out, and you can kind of get a better feel for like what you want the zoom to be. If you record vertically, that's kind of what you got, right? Because you can go in, but you can't go any farther out.
Yeah.
So
got it. So now you've got this 60-second video. There aren't any zooms and stuff yet, right? It's just one long thing. So tell me some of the things you're generally looking for, because again, I mentioned earlier, I don't know if I heard this somewhere or I just made it up by observing other people, but I was like every 3 to 5 seconds there was a change of frame. That's what I was going for. But curious, like, do you have any general rules and things that you're looking like you want to emphasize something, so you zoom in, or when to use B-roll, when to use overlays, stuff like that?
So the beauty of having both the full screen shot and the split screen shot is that switch is of like frame changer in itself, and so you almost don't need to do any treatment. Like you don't have to do any zooms or anything when you switch those cuts. And so that gives you it's as if you had two different camera angles to cut between almost, which is nice. So the first thing I'll do is kind of clone the main shot, and I'll have two layers. One is the zoomed out one is the full. And then, to your point, like at the beginning, every 1 to 2 seconds on a short, something should be happening, whether it's a graphics coming in, you're zooming in, you're zooming out, you're switching from the full to half. And I'm not too religious about like literally every 1 to 2 seconds, but when I'm watching it, if I'm bored, someone else is going to be bored, is how I think about it. So if there's a section that's like 3 seconds long and it nothing really changed besides a slight zoom in, and I'm like, by the end of it, I was getting like antsy, then I'll add something in because I just know that people are going to churn there. So I would say like when I start editing, here's a few things I look for. On the edit, I spend 40% of the time just on the first 3 seconds. So I'm doing so much like, how do I grab somebody in the first 3 seconds? Is it usually, if I'm talking about a company, it's like the logo comes across quick with a sound effect, and then it's zooming in, and then I'll cut right away. So I'm spending a lot of time up front because it's like what Mr. B says, right? If your thumbnails are shitty and no one clicks on the video, then it doesn't matter all the work you did. Same thing with like all the work you did when they're at the 50-second mark doesn't matter if nobody gets there, right? So
yeah, it's like a headline in a, or like the first line of a tweet, headline of a blog post is, or a headline of a newspaper, honestly, as well. It's just like, that's what's capturing your attention. Got it.
Yeah. So what I think about is like, so there's only a few different types of editing tricks that I use. I'm not that good, to be honest. Like I don't know, I didn't know how to use keyframes for a long time, and keyframes is kind of what you use to control most like zooming and stuff. So just for anyone listening, like there's only a couple things you need to do to go from good to great. One of them is like zooms in and outs. And so in Premiere, the scale feature is basically the zoom. And
it's
so
similar to Final Cut as well. You basically drag and drop it, you drag it in and out sort of thing, right?
Exactly, yeah. And so what I'll do is anytime I'm saying something where I'm like you would like lean in, I kind of zoom in as well to exaggerate the effect. Or anytime I'm saying something that lingers, but like I'm emphasizing it less, maybe I'll like zoom out. And it's very slight. Like every time you put a graphic on the screen, there should just be like a little 1 degree zoom in or out just to add a little bit of motion. And so a lot of it is just zooms, quick cuts, and putting graphics on the screen. And the graphics can either show up or they can like zoom on, but those are just, it's the same thing with zoom, it's just the graphic.
Yeah. So you've mentioned the regular vertical video of just you speaking, and then the second, like in Final Cut, you create something called multicam or something like that. So when I used to do in-person videos, we would have 2-3 cameras and you would be able to switch between them. So similar here, you would have one version of you and then one version of you, but with an overlay, or like the top half is like images or whatever. Now, like there's difference between just getting regular images, but there's the viral style video stuff that like my editor does it for NIA, for TikTok as well. There's that style which looks similar to yours in terms of there's like animations or little clips. So where are you getting those from? Like it sounds like a very basic question, but curious, is there like a library you use for that, or what's that look like?
So I'm trying to pull up the Premiere so I can actually show my timeline for people, which would be helpful. That's why my eyes are darting around.
Super helpful.
Most of them are just like, I go to Google and this is a good question, which is like, how do I use a lot of like funny GIFs, right? And like things that'll make people laugh and like puns and stuff. So I just go to Google and I search like for the messy video, it's just like messy GIF or like messy mad GIF or like, and I'm just playing around looking for GIFs, and usually like Google search is pretty good with the GIFs. And so I can find one pretty quick and I'll just save that GIF to my computer and drag it in the timeline. And that's it. It's really,
oh wow. Okay. So that's
it's just like an image. Yeah.
Do you ever have videos though in there as well?
Yeah, so I use a tool for video called Downy. So there's a set of productivity apps called Set App, and it has like 1,000 or has like 100 apps in it. One of the apps called Downy, DOWNIE, and it's the easiest thing ever. Like if you find a YouTube video and you want to take a clip from the YouTube video, just grab the URL from the YouTube. You just paste the URL in Downy, and it will download it to an MP4 on your computer, like literally in 2 seconds. It's so nice. And then there's a sister app of Downy called Permute, which in Downy you can go to the video file and you can click on the little menu and you can say convert to MP3. So if you just want to rip the audio, instead of having to go to YouTube to MP3 convert, those sites with all the like what looks like a virus, like instead of having to go to those, you can just use Permute and then it will pull it and you've got an MP3. It's so easy to use.
Oh man, that's super helpful. Yeah, I haven't used either of those, and I have used those sites that make you feel like you're about to put a virus on your machine, like you're on Kazaa in 2007 or something like that. But that's super helpful. So a lot of this is just this is the bulk of the edit though, right? Just to bring us back out of the weeds, because this has been very helpful to get in the weeds, but you've got the timeline. Every 1 to 2 seconds, you're making adjustments. Zoom, you're switching between the one camera versus the other one. You're bringing in a little GIF. You're bringing in the logo. Talk to me a little bit about sound, because this morning you posted a great video on Instagram of a guy, I don't know his name. He's a guy
Roberto.
You follow, Roberto. And he had a really great, I can't remember what the 3 types of sound were, but this was actually very helpful. Do you remember off the top of your head what they were?
Yeah, he said, so risers, whooshes, and hits. He's like used those 3. He's much better with sound design. I'm actually not that great with sound design. So what you should do is go on YouTube, search like best sound effects for video, there'll be like a 6-minute YouTube video. You can use Downey and Permute or whatever to get that MP3 and then go drag it into Premiere, drag it into Final Cut. You can chop up each individual sound and then you can save those sounds as MP3s to your computer. So then when you're making a video, if you're like, oh, it would be good to have, like I have the cash sound. So anytime I'm talking about money, I just play the like cash register. So I just have that in a folder. So I can just drag that on really easily. So that's what he was saying. There's 3 different types of sounds that work really well: risers, whooshes, and hits. And all of those, again, like Epidemic Sound is what I use for royalty-free music, and they have a bunch of sound effects. So you can just go in there and search like risers, and they have a bunch of different options, and then you can just download the riser from there.
Got it. Okay, that's great. And so that's sound. Is there anything else we're missing on the edit part? Oh, well, this is even better. So for people who are
you're gonna want to go to YouTube.
Definitely go check this. Yeah, this is the actual Premiere share. So talk me through this.
Yeah. So let me mute the audio. So basically, what you've got is I recorded it one time, and so A1 is. Let me see if I can zoom in more. This A1 row is kind of my initial audio. Then I've got these 2 blue boxes here. These are the same video. One is fully zoomed in and one is cropped out. See how that one is like cropped out? You can see more of my background. This is kind of the split screen view. That's the bottom row. And then the top row is the full screen. So anytime I have them both stacked, it's full screen. And then if I just have, just the bottom, I have to drag it up sometimes for like layering, which I'll show you. It's going to be the split screen. And so the first thing I do is I have that initial take with this initial sound. And like you can see, if I zoom in more, you can see all these cuts, right? So like, let me play the first one. So then it cuts right there. I don't know. Could you hear that audio?
I couldn't hear it, but that's all right. But we could see.
Okay.
You could see the captions on the screen anyway. So it says, "Can you imagine if Nike was losing? A world where Nike's losing, maybe?"
Yeah, exactly.
And so you went from one video of the vertical view of you to the second one, which is now the overlay.
Exactly. So just looking at this first sentence, which was the full video of me, all that I had going on is you can see this pink mask group. So it's just a caption, and there's a slight zoom going on. So if you click on this, you can see these little diamonds. These are keyframes. So I'm zooming from 179 to 195. So you can see, like, as it plays, it's kind of like zooming in. That just adds like a little bit of visual effect. Yeah. So then I have this group is the Nike logo. So I have the Nike logo fly in, and then I have it rotate to kind of imply like when something's rotating, it's kind of like getting scrambled and messed up. Because what I'm saying is, can you imagine where Nike's losing? And then I have this GIF of Zion's shoe, Nike shoe busting, which this is like a perfect GIF for this in terms of like, can you imagine when Nike was losing? But it happens so fast that you might not even be able to identify like what it is. Okay. So that one might not have worked. Like, this is full speed. It's like it happens so quickly. And then we don't have to go through the whole thing, but then the second frame is like, okay, this one's split screen. So at the top of the screen, I have a news article talking about Nike struggling, and I do a little zoom on the article, and then I have a yellow thing come over to help focus your attention. And so it's like, these are just little pieces. Like, if you, anybody can do this. You just have to get faster over time and identifying like, okay, what would help tell the story visually, and how do I actually execute it in Premiere? But a lot of this is brilliant. Just find the GIF, put the GIF, sequence it, Yeah,
it's so manual. Like, a lot of people think a lot of these is automated, not completely automated, but like, for example, the captions. Is that manually done?
So the captions are automated to an extent. So basically, all you have to do is you put the beginning and end point of the video, and you go to text, and if you didn't have captions, there would just be a button that's like create captions. And what it will do is it'll use natural language to automatically identify the words you're saying. And then you can tell it how fine or not fine you want the word split. So for me, my setting is like 18, because I want like 18 characters-ish, 18 to 20 characters. I don't want a full sentence, but I also don't like when it's just one word at a time, because there's just too much happening. So you just do that, and then it will spit it out. And I have to go through and kind of manually adjust sometimes. Or like if there's a phrase and it splits the words in a way that's not intuitive, I'll fix it. But yeah, most of that's automatic.
Okay, that's great, man. And then just to clarify, are there 2 versions here where you've got, you're on the bottom part of the half here, and was there ones where you were on the top half too?
It's the same recording, but so I'll show you. Like,
I mean, like, have you created 3 different angles here, or like 3 different
no, just
types
2.
Okay,
just
so
2.
This is a regular one, and then you've got.
So here's an example. Like, I'll drag. This is the full recording, right? So this is, you can see all the spaces here. This is like my original recording with a bunch of takes.
Got it.
So what I can do is, if I want 2 takes of it, I'll just hold Option, drag this up, and now I have 2. This first one I'll leave how it is, and let me just hide that for now. This bottom one, I'll just go to Scale, and this has some things in here, so let me just delete these so that it works. So I just go to Scale, and 93 is what's like a split screen. So now it's split screen, and I'll just take it down to the bottom. So this is the same take. I just zoom in and out so that it changes visual field.
That's great. And then the top part is where you're dragging the other half, and then you're just switching between those 2 views basically.
Exactly.
So you're always on the bottom in the split screen.
Exactly, yeah. I usually don't do it on the top because there's the iPhone and TikTok hides this like kind of top part. So there would be something over my face basically if I was on the top.
Yeah. Okay, got it. No, that's super helpful. Thanks for showing that. Very, very helpful to see in practice, because we were saying, again, for some people, they're like, what? If you're not planning to do something on TikTok, that might be too much detail. But for anyone who is, that is the stuff we were both saying in our own journeys of creating stuff on the internet. Like sometimes you're on a podcast and you hear something, you're like, oh, that sounds great. And then you go to do it yourself and you're like, where do I even start? What does it look like? So if someone's watching that, you could take a screenshot of that and like reference what you're learning in Premiere. I use Final Cut Pro. I did weigh that up when I first started. Final Cut Pro was probably the easier one to learn, I think. I think a lot of the things you do in Photoshop, you can probably do in Final Cut, but like I know a lot of like my editor uses Adobe, like I think the more advanced people use Adobe. But yeah, I'm curious, do you know like from other people you've followed, like you can do most of the stuff in Final Cut too?
Yeah, there are huge YouTubers that use Final Cut. So like
you
can do anything in Final Cut. Exactly.
Yeah.
It just depends on what
your preference.
So if you have a Mac, Final Cut's, well, you can't use Final Cut if you don't have a Mac. So if you have a Mac, Final Cut's good because it's an Apple software. So it's like built a little bit more intuitively for the chip. But I think Premiere, it works best with After Effects and Photoshop because those are Adobe products. And so I don't use After Effects or really Photoshop, but if you have an editor that does, they can actually they link a lot easier basically.
Got it. That's awesome. Well, no, thanks for going in that detail, man. I think that's very, very helpful. Now let's move on. Are you all right for time, right? We can just keep going for a while?
Let's
so
keep
this is great. I'm learning a lot. So we talked about the edit. That was a big part of this. Now you're ready to post. You've created, you said 25 videos initially, but how many would you make before you'd start posting? Like initially, did you make like 5 or something?
Oh, no. I made 1 and posted it. I think every time you make one, you should post. Yeah.
Just post it straight away and then you get the feedback straight away. So you're starting from 0 followers on TikTok. You create a new account. There's a weird, shiny feeling, right? Like, oh, there's excitement, but then there's also that feeling of, oh man, no one's even going to see this. What was that like for the first few videos? And like, did any of them pop straight away? And
yeah, that's what I was going to pull up my profile and go all the way back. I think so. In terms of like what it feels like, it sucks when you spend all that time making the videos.
6 hours making that, right? Yeah.
And then no one sees it. But the thing you have to realize, and this is how I look at it, for me, every video I make, it's just practice. It's like Kobe wasn't dope because he was born dope. Like he practiced so much, and it sounds silly, but like even the videos I make now, they're just practice. Like in 5 years, there's gonna be a moment where I work with somebody on one video and that video gets 100 million views or whatever, and it's amazing for them and me and whatever. Every single step up until that point was just practice, and that's how I look at it.
That's a great mindset around it. Yeah.
When you have that mindset, it's like, okay, you went to practice, you hit some shots today. You went to practice, you didn't hit some shots today, and you really have to take a long-term view. You can't expect it to work in 2 weeks because nothing was learned in 2 weeks basically. And so that's kind of the mindset I have. I got to the bottom of my thing. So fortunately, TikTok does a good job when you're brand new of giving you some views.
Little boost, right?
Yeah, it's not like it's 0. So they'll get you
like
a couple
when
hundred.
You're bowling.
Yeah, exactly. They'll give you like a couple hundred. So my first 6 videos were like I guess now people probably gone back and watched them, but they were like 1,000 views or less, I would say, which on TikTok is basically nothing because they'll give it to you for free. My 8th video got 74,000 views.
Oh, damn. Okay.
But at the time, I think it was at like 20,000. And the thing is, I was thinking about this. Sometimes all you need is just one at the beginning to go well, just to give you enough confidence to be momentum, like, I can do this. Exactly. And I could have gone another 100 with no views, but just knowing that I made something that people liked, that was all I needed. So not everybody's delusional enough.
But also compared to all the other, you've done the podcast, you've done all these things, like that probably was the first time it really popped. You're like, wow, 75,000 people saw this. That's a massive pop.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about that, like in a sports stadium, it's like, that's crazy. And that's another reason why some people think like short form is a little bit vanity metrics, because yes, it's 75,000, but a lot of those views are probably 3 seconds and someone's flipped away and they don't even know who I am. And that's fair. That's like a good argument. It's not like those 75,000 are super deep, but the whole point of it is to prove to yourself that you can do it, so that when you go do the deep stuff, then you're confident in it. And so I think like it takes pure delusion to be able to post like 100 in a row with 0 views. Like that is really hard. Yeah. And so short form is good because it's easier to pop on one that is like, medium quality, just because the thing you're talking about ended up resonating. And so it's helpful just to get one under your belt that's working. And
for sure.
I think it took me a while before I had anything go like in the millions. Like I think my 21st video got 200,000. So that's like 100 hours of work before I even got one over in the 6 figures. Like, that's a lot of work.
That's a good way to put it. That's 100 hours. Yeah. That's crazy. Well, and so that's really helpful to know for context. Again, for people who are starting up, that's kind of what it takes. Another thing I do want to bring up is you're describing one approach. And again, like the whole point of the show is to showcase people doing all sorts of things in different ways. Now, there are other people I've seen really pop off not doing your approach, which is the super high quality, beautiful background, beautiful camera, chopping it up, doing the captions. And like, for example, there's an Arsenal guy that I follow who's doing a great job on there, where he just puts up his camera. Even like Chef Reactions is a good example, right? Like he's, you've probably seen his stuff, right? You've seen Chef Reactions. He's a funny dude. He also happens to be an Arsenal fan, which is amazing. But they just put the camera up. They're talking to the camera. Like, I'm curious to get your take on that, because my assumption is you would say, well, yeah, you can do that, but you're not giving yourself the best chance of it working. But I'm curious to hear your approach where someone else says, look, what you did was great, but I don't know if I can do that today. Like, I can't afford to spend 6 hours a day on this. What would you say to someone who's like, maybe I'll just start by talking into an iPhone or something?
Yeah, and I would say that's completely fine. Like, at the end of the day, it all boils down to what format's going to work that allows you to not quit. That's all it comes down to.
Keep going,
so for me, I don't think I have a good presence to like hold the phone, point the camera at myself and just like talk unedited. Like I don't feel confident in it. So then if I don't feel good about it, I'm not going to post it, and that'll make me quit. So for me, like the types of videos that I think I'm uniquely suited to make maybe would be like
these
kind
polished
that I make.
Ones. Yeah.
But the thing is, entertainment is more important than like informing. So my videos, I try to be entertaining, but at the end of the day, like the core value is I'm teaching people something, or I'm telling them something about about a product or a new brand. But the videos that will always do better than mine is the pure entertainment, because people like entertainment and laughing more than they like learning. If you can infuse both, which is what I'm trying to do, is be entertaining while teaching. To me, that's like as high as I can get, because I'm never going to be like an Andrew Schulz. I'm never going to be like a pure comedian. That's just not my personality.
Yeah,
so it's important to know like who you are and what will make you not quit. So if you think you're, it doesn't even matter if you think you're good. If you think you will be interested and you'll like doing it, where you just hold the phone, no edits, and just like riff, do that. That's way easier than what I'm doing. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right. No, I was just curious. I assumed you'd be down for either way for whoever it is, but that's a good answer, because it really depends on what you're trying to do. The other thing I will say, the kind of macro point, all of this is assuming the goal is to grow an audience, and like obviously have fun, learn, do all these other things. But like, for example, I've talked about this before, but like Creator Lab, I've been doing since 2015, recording it, right? And I still do it. I don't do it every week like I used to, and I've put it in a place where I can manage to do it, and I still love doing it. And I have not investment advice. I do that every week because it's 2 other people. It's in the calendar. It's easy for me to do. So my main objective with it is for my own personal life. I love having long form conversations with interesting people and putting stuff out that can help people. Of course, I'd love stuff to grow and I want it to grow and that part of my brain switches on. But I've now got to a point where it really is the primary objective with these are to have great conversations. Like I genuinely just learned so much in the last 2 hours, wherever we've been here, that I'm going to remember and use for the rest of my life. Like, and obviously we have a relationship as well as friends. And so that is more important to me than just like getting 1 million people to listen to something. And so that's the other thing I think before anyone, if you're starting up, trying to create something on the internet, like it's really important to define what that is up front and keep coming back to that goal. And also don't be delusional. Like for most people, it is to grow. They do want an audience. And sometimes you need to do some deeper work to understand like why you want an audience in the first place. Because sometimes it can be very positive. Sometimes it can be very negative. And when you get to that place where you got people following you, or you get that bad hater comment and you get like a bad comment, that can ruin your whole day if you're not going into it with the right frame of mind. So let's talk a little bit about that, because a lot of this, again, something I don't think is talked about that much, is just the mental side of putting stuff on the internet. Is very vulnerable. Like for a lot of people, we see influencers in the wild, you know, that account, and we can all laugh at someone doing something silly. But for a lot of people, like me and you included, 99% of comments are positive, but I'm sure you get once or twice someone's like you mentioned, like, oh, you're shaking your head or whatever. Curious to hear your take on that side of things.
Yeah. So like now my approach is kind of post and ghost, which is I'll post and then, you know, at the beginning, you want to engage in every comment. You want to respond to every comment, mostly because someone took the time to watch it and like leave a comment. And unless it's a hater comment, but like you want to take the time to engage, and that's how you build audience and community. But at this point, I'm getting so many comments that I just can't respond to all of them. And so if a video goes viral, it's going to attract a barbell of people. On one end, you're going to have people that love it, a lot of people in the middle, and on one end, you're going to have people that hate it. The problem is the hate comments are the ones that get the most likes, and those are the ones that surface from the algorithm, like to the top of the comment list.
They hurt the most, yeah.
They hurt the most.
More than the nice feeling you get from the good ones. There's like a 10 out of 10 feeling, yeah.
Yeah. The good news is like I haven't seen that many comments that are like purely hateful about me as a person. Like most are really like bigoted comments about the topic I'm talking about, or like one of my first ones to get 1 million views was when SBF, like the whole like FTX thing with SBF. And you can just imagine the comments in there. I had 3 million views in that video and the comments were out of control. Like it was like religious stuff and like the politics of like SBF donating to the Democrat side, and like there was right versus left. There were so many little microcosms of hatred going on. It was like a festival crowd with like all these different mosh pits is basically what it was like.
That's funny.
And I just like stay out of that. Like I don't want to deal with that. So most of the time I just post and goes, but that is contradictory to what most people say, which is if you want to build depth with the audience, you got to go in and respond to comments and like really build a relationship individually, brick by brick. So I do struggle with that, but most of these platforms except Twitter, I just like laugh at most of the comments. Like it's just like funny because an anonymous person, you just like picture them like whatever, like in their basement just being a hater. To me, it's like kind of funny unless they're being like really insulting to me.
Yeah.
But on Twitter, those ones cut the deepest because that's the crowd I want to like me, right? Like that's founders and entrepreneurs or creators and entrepreneurs is kind of like, that's who I want to build for. That's who I eventually want to, build products for. That's who I want to make content for. So when those types of people on Twitter don't like my videos, and that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen occasionally, those hurt for sure. But, you just got to realize that it took somebody 30 seconds to think about that, and then they don't think about it ever again. So like to let yourself get affected it's just silly,
Yeah, 100%. Well, there's a quote from my boy David Goggins that I like to reference here, which is, you'll never meet a hater doing better than you. So I think that's a nice thing to remember. Like someone who's gone out of their way to write something like that, you just got to remember, man, like that person's having a bad day, give them a benefit of doubt. You don't know what's going on in their life. Or they might just be a terrible person. That happens sometimes too. So it is hard though, right? Like you once in a while I'll get one. I rarely get stuff because it's like I'm mostly just posting stuff on podcasts, so you don't even get comments. But like once in a while you get one and you're like, oh, that was unnecessary. It's a little bit kind of hurtful, but you just kind of got to take it on the chin sometimes and realize it's not that personal. they don't really know you, right? So, but I do think it's important to know that up front going in, because it's not for everyone. Like there's certain people who are just mentally not in a place where you want those comments, and it can really hit you pretty badly if you're not in a good place. You also talked about growing there. So you talked about the commenting, the engaging with people. Outside of that, which I think is obviously really important, especially in the beginning, are there other things specifically for TikTok? And now let's also move on to Instagram Reels as the two main focuses that really help in terms of actually growing, apart from obviously creating banger content, posting regularly. Like, for example, for a long time when TikTok, you'll see people put hashtags. Like, I don't know how much that even helps, if it helps at all. Similarly with Instagram, curious to get your take, what actually helps.
Yeah, I think 80-20, 80% is like the just post a video you're proud of with the skills you have at that day, and like be consistent, because I'm assuming the way the algorithms are built is like they have your profile, they don't have it stored, but like they wrote some logic that's like for every profile, if it hits this amount of posts per period, boost it, because we want to reward the consistency to keep them coming back. And so I don't know what that number is, but the more you post, the more consistent you post, the more it's going to get boosted. So that is 80% of it. I think commenting, responding to comments is helpful. And then the truth is, like with short form video, this is where the contradictory piece is. The more divisive the comments, the better it will do. Because if you say something that everyone agrees with, you'll get a lot of likes, but people will be like, they won't share that.
People
People
go
like,
out their way to comment. It's kind of like Yelp reviews for restaurants. It's like the people that really loved it and the ones who had a 1-star rating. Yeah.
That's why for me, I take a story, I have a perspective. I don't always take a contradictory stance on purpose. I just take whatever perspective I want. But by taking a firm stance, you're going to get people who are on the other side that want to comment and debate with you. And that'll cause the controversy in the comments, which will make it go viral. If you just take like a middle of the road stance on anything, it's not going to go as viral. So that's kind of like a contradictory piece of like, you don't want to incite disagreement, but like that is what makes the content do well. So that is part of the growth. And then I think like at the end of your videos, I don't always do this, but like saying like, if you like the story and you want more, follow, or for more stories like this, you can follow me. Just like the little subtle reminder, if somebody got all the way to the end of a short form video, there's a chance they like you. And so just reminding them to like follow or subscribe is helpful. But honestly, just posting the best videos that go viral, that's what's going to cause you to grow.
Yeah, 100%. And then is there any differences between Instagram Reels versus TikTok, just in terms of like even organic reach I'm thinking of? Because, a lot of on Instagram, you can see likes and stuff, but actually, can you see the number of views on there? I can't remember.
There are some metrics. I actually think TikTok's demographic splits might be better at a per video level, but Instagram gives you pretty rich insights at a profile level. So I think it's like about the same. I treat them very similarly. The only difference is that Instagram and stories are actually used a lot. I think TikTok might have stories, but nobody uses them. And so for Instagram stories, I'm getting like 2,000 views per story. And so it's starting to get like pretty sizable. So I'm not the best at kind of documenting my life, but the idea is if you want to build depth and the only thing you're doing is posting short form videos, people will, they'll see your videos in the feed, but they're not going to have that individual relationship with you unless you are doing the talking head videos. So with stories, you can kind of show more of your life behind the scenes. And I've tried to do that with like sharing other people's content and things like that. So I think that helps grow on Instagram. But from what I've seen, Instagram is less lumpy. So you'll grow steady. Maybe you'll get one to catch virality. It's a little bit harder to get people to follow you on Instagram because it's a little bit more curated, but it's less lumpy in terms of if you post a video and you have 100,000 followers, you're going to get 5,000 to 10,000 views unless it's a really bad one. On TikTok, it is so unpredictable. Like I could have a video that I'm dead sure this is going to get 1 million views, gets 3,000 views. Just doesn't make sense, So
that's crazy. It's tough. And so you've got 160,000 followers on there?
Yeah, 160K on TikTok. And
do you ever post stories on there? Sorry.
No, I don't.
Have you ever tried that? I've seen a few people do that as well. I don't know what you even post most of the time. And then the other thing that's really big on there, both of them, is lives. Have you ever done any lives before?
Never done any lives. So one of the things with like having the day job and trying to do content is like I was so strapped for time that I could only really focus on like getting that one short out. But now that I'm full time on this, I think I'm going to start experimenting with some different things.
Amazing. All right, cool. We're going to touch on that a little bit as well. So I know we've taken up a bunch of time, but I do want to just talk a little bit about transitioning out of short form and talk about newsletter a little bit, because you talked about the benefit of that. You've got one called espressoletter.com once a week, right? And
yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit about that, because I'm curious. You know, people who've listened to Create Lab know the benefit of, you know, having an email list and stuff like that. But is that still a focus for you? And how do you see taking people from those platforms onto newsletter? Do you find that is actually doable, and is it actually effective or not really?
I actually get a lot of top of funnel conversion from Instagram to the newsletter. Surprisingly, like TikTok's almost nothing. TikTok may not even be real people. I don't even really know, but
yeah.
Instagram does work. Like I tried to test this one day where I was like, really what my newsletter is, basically, I guess, to take a step back. I'm spending all day, all week trying to curate the most interesting stories across tech and brands. So I'm like, how can I use that sawdust? If I'm making videos, how else could I use that? Okay, I could package that up in an email. I could, have a podcast where I run down those topics. There's like a bunch of different ways I can do it. And so one day I made a short being like, hey, these are the 5 best stories I found today. And like, by the way, I summarized this in the email, and it drove like hundreds of subscribers. So I was pretty surprised that Instagram, like it's just my link in the Instagram bio. And I just said, subscribe, and it worked. So I actually think that's an under-tapped tool. Most people don't use short form video to drive the email. They use things like Twitter, which works really well, but might be getting a little bit saturated.
Just because it's like text to text versus audio video to text. But yeah, if it hundreds is quite a significant amount, because I think even a big viral text thread on Twitter, like you might get 100 or 1,000 max, but 1,000 is very high. Like most people won't get that.
So I think using short form video to drive email subs is an under-tapped acquisition channel. So I guess I'll like put that out there. In terms of like my approach, my whole goal is I want to build an ecosystem for founders and creators, because that's who I am. That's who I like spending time with. That's what I think about all day. And so the goal, and I'm still early in this journey, is how do I make short form videos? How do I make long form videos, podcasts, newsletters that add value, either save time, make money, help them grow, founders and creators? That's kind of like the idea.
Yeah.
And so Espresso is that, but in written form, and it's still evolving. I'm potentially going to break different pieces of it out. I think it's helpful when a creator actually shows the behind the scenes, and like I'm potentially going to do like a monthly series on YouTube or something where it's like, here's how much I grew, here's what I tried, here's what I didn't try, here's what I learned. So I think it'd be helpful to read that like as a creator. So I might start doing that.
Yeah, beautiful. And then this is a tactical question, but very curious, your experience using Beehive versus something like Substack. I know you shouted out the founder, I think. I don't know if you know him. Is it 1 or 2 people? Was he a Morning Brew guy or something? I think.
Yeah, he was like the first or second employee at Morning Brew, and he built their entire custom stack that allowed them to like do have multiple writers write the stories and have the ads come in automatically. Like he built that whole software stack that basically is Beehive. So he built that custom for Morning Brew, and then he's like, okay, I could easily take this out and like build a SaaS tool with it.
Looks like he smashed it. So just objectively speaking, I don't know if you're friends or anything with him, but just like you must have looked at Substack, you must have looked at others. And again, for people who don't know, these are tools you can use to manage your newsletter essentially. I'm curious what your pros and cons were for those two in particular.
Yeah, so I think there's 3 reasons why you should use Beehive. Like and I'm not paid by them or anything.
Yeah.
But if you're going to start an email newsletter, there's 3 reasons you should use Beehive. The first is the existing features compared to what exists today. They're just better and more expensive. So anything from making it easier to custom design your landing page, custom design your newsletter format. If you want to immediately monetize they have a couple different levers you can pull. One is called Boosts, which is on your newsletter when a subscriber comes in, they subscribe to yours, and then you show them a page that's like, hey, here's 3 other newsletters I like. Do you want to also subscribe to these? You'll get paid when they do subscribe. So the monetization is in there. They've got built-in referral. They've got all these different things that are already built in today, AI features they just launched. So that's reason number 1 is the feature set's just better. Reason number 2 is they ship faster than anybody else. So the features coming soon will be more expansive, more innovative, and better than anything else in the market. I would say like up until this point, they took what existed and made it better. and they've added a couple sprinkles of innovation, but I would say like pretty much industry standard of what they've launched, but it's just like a better quality. But moving forward, they're now going to pioneer what email newsletters look like. And because they ship faster and arguably have better technical talent, you know, that will get better faster. So you have like a compounding advantage. And then the third reason is I call Beehive like a pirate ship. It's like one of those like cult brands, you know, it's obviously not in the same scale as like a Tesla or an Apple, but like the way that people who like Tesla and Apple rally around the cause is how people act when they have a newsletter on Beehive. And because of that, you get like tangential benefits of feeling like you're in this community. People will share your stuff more on Twitter. It's just like, it's almost like a accidental, you know, fraternity in a way, being a part of it.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. No, it's a great pitch for them, and I respect that. So I will definitely check them out as well. Last question on the creative side, because I know we've been going for a while, is really monetization. Obviously, all of this, ultimately, you need to make a living. You're no longer working in a job or your previous job anyways. So curious, like how you think about monetizing TikTok. I think you did a couple, and Instagram specifically. I think you did, I saw at least the Adobe one. You did one of those, there was like an AI video or something like that. That looked kind of cool. You might have done others. I'm curious what that looks like in practice, whatever you're able to share. Again, always interesting to hear actual numbers if you're able to share what that looks like for people on there.
Yeah, I've done like, I think 5 or 6 brand deals so far. And those have just looked like companies reaching out. They want me to make a video about a product they're launching or a story in my format. And what's convenient but also intentional for me is like, it turns out that the niche that I was authentically interested in is perfectly conducive to getting paid by brands, because I'm naturally talking about new stuff.
You're talking about brands. Yeah.
So it is a little bit easier, I would say, for a brand to get around paying me to make a video versus a different creator who might have a viral audience but doesn't really frame things in the way that I do. So that's helpful. But right now, like I'm right at the beginning of kind of the monetization journey. So I wanted to do a few sponsored branded posts. The way I look at, I don't really look at them as ads though. I want to look at them as collaborations. So whenever I work with a brand, I want it to be more in depth, and I want to actually really like what the brand does, so that in the future, if you think of me and you think of the 20 to 30 brands that I endorse, it's more like a golfer or like a NASCAR driver and less like, you know, like a factory that just pumps out ads, is kind of how I want to look at it. Now, how that will work in terms of like being able to pay the bills, we'll see, but that's how I want to think about kind of like sponsored posts or sponsored videos. There's a lot of other monetization engines though, like Beehive with the boost for the newsletter, or TikTok paying for the views, or people are making money on Snapchat. I haven't started monetizing there yet, or YouTube with AdSense. So there's like a lot of little things that when you're starting, these are, you know, tens, 20s, hundreds of dollars a month that are coming in, but they will add up and compound over time. So for now though, like the broad vision is to build my own, you know, to bring it full circle, to build my own holdco of brands where the majority of the value that I accrue is in the brand, and the content is just the engine that makes, you know, gives distribution to those brands for free. So as long as I can just cover my burn with the content, my only goal is just making the best videos possible and bringing people in who are interested, founders and creators who are interested in this type of thing. And, you know, hopefully we'll see where the chips fall. But yeah, I'm definitely, I would say like in terms of numbers, CPMs for branded videos on short form is anywhere from like $5 to $10, I would say. So for example, if you're going to get 100,000 views, and your CPM is $10, what is that? $1,000?
Yeah.
So that'd be $1,000 for the video. So it's hard with short form because your number of followers doesn't necessarily map to your number of views, because I've had videos get 3 million views when I had like 80,000 followers. And so it's like, how do you charge for that? It's kind of tough.
So does that work on TikTok specifically and Instagram? Do they normally pay, they look at your averages, I guess, and say, oh, based on this, we're going to pay X amount? Or is it a, like, oh, we're estimating this, but we will pay a CPM, and by the 30-day mark, you can tell us how much it was and we'll pay this amount? I'm curious how that generally works.
Most of them don't want to do the uncapped upside, because I could peel off a 4 million view and then they owe a lot. So I think what most brands do is they'll take like an average of your last 20 videos and see like what the view count ish has been. And then I post it on Instagram and TikTok, and I have it on YouTube and all these platforms. So you kind of have to add all of that up. And then for me, I put a little bit of a premium on it just because I am talking about brands and tech. And so I feel like I get a little bit you know, a little bit of a premium, but that's a good guide. Like if you're getting 500, it adds up quickly. If you're getting 500,000 views on average for a video and you're at a $5 CPM, that's $2,500, I think, or maybe not. It might be less. I don't know. I think it's like 20, we don't do public math.
No public math. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think it's like $2,500 or something.
All right, cool. And then just again, whatever you have to share, you did talk about quitting your job. This is the last section. We're going to talk a little bit about life stuff and your health journey that you've been on. So first of all, thank you for the masterclass, man. This was absolute deep as I've ever got in TikTok, short form, Instagram. You know, I've done episodes on email and YouTube and like newsletters and all that stuff. This was one missing piece that is a bit more, you know, of 2023, to be honest, and like something I've been wanting to learn a lot about. So hopefully it's helpful to people. But let's talk a little bit about actually the reality of doing this, because on paper, you got 160,000 followers on TikTok, over 100 on Instagram, right? Like that's a lot of followers. And you're getting this traction. You've worked really, really hard. You've worked thousands of hours on this, I'm assuming by this point. So first of all, hats off to you. That I know how hard it is to do that. It makes me very happy to see you succeeding in that way.
Thank you, man.
But let's talk about the quitting job, because I've done this in the past. People on the pod have done it. This is a hard thing, right? Like leaving the 9 to 5 where you're making X amount of money. Again, what you told me over text, you want to share as much as you could, be transparent. You've been so transparent today with opening up your screen, looking at script, looking at Premiere. So tell us whatever you want to. What you don't want to is completely fine too. Like, I think the big struggle mentally for a lot of people is I'm earning X amount per month, and my bills are X amount per month, my burn every month. Hopefully there's a gap in between, so you've got some upside there. But then you go to zero a lot of the time, and now you're trying to get it back up and replace that income. So, like, I don't know where you are in that journey, if you're still trying to get up to covering your burn, or if you're trying to get up to getting to your actual, what you earned in the past, or you've exceeded that. Just like whatever you're able to share on that is always helpful for context.
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing strategically is there is like a non-dollar cost, switching cost when you do multiple things. So like, in order for me to be the best at making videos and ideally grow the fastest, every second that I spend not thinking about that is just slowing down my compounding. And so at some point, like, you know, you have to make that, that doesn't show up on the table, right? Like you can't eat compounding, but like, that's one thing to think about. So the way I was thinking of it is, if you can, the best thing to do is start doing what you want to do while you have your job. Do both. And if you can replace your income before you leave, I mean, that's the best scenario, right? As soon as you replace your income, just leave. Like, there's no reason to stay if you're replacing the income. Most people though, and I would say myself included, I left a little bit before that income was replaced. So the way I think about it is, it's not the salary you're replacing, it's the burn you have to cover, right? So like for me individually, my burn is maybe like 5 to 7K a month or something.
Yeah.
I live in San Diego, whatever,
similar
et cetera,
to me,
et cetera. Yeah. So it's like I live like an upper class lifestyle, but nothing crazy, and around, you know, 4 to 8K.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah,
no, exactly. I get what you're saying. No, but it's I think a lot of people in Europe, especially, like the comparables aren't anywhere near the same. Even in London, well, London is expensive, but I'm just trying to give context for people. Like salaries here are also a lot higher than, let's say, in most of Europe. So that's just something to bear in mind. So let's just say 5 to 7 a month is your burn. Yeah.
So let's say 5K is your burn. So 5 times 12, to make it easy, is 60K a year is your burn, let's just say. And that's post-tax income. So pre-tax income, let's just say it's double, so, which is really high, but like, so 120K. So if you earn 120K from a side thing, then you're breaking even, covering your burn. And what you have to figure out is, like, if you're burning 5K, ideally you have some savings that you can draw down. For me, what I think something that I made a mistake with, I think, and most people do, is they wait way too long. Like, you don't actually need 3 years of burn covered. You really, especially if you have some traction. Like I already have some traction. I've done some brand deals. I know that if I needed to, I could squeeze out the burn right now. So I'm now like, I'm in a comfortable phase. I'm not covering the burn by choice, but I could if I need to. So for people who are around that level, you really only need, I would say, 8 to 12 months of burn covered. So in this case, it's what, 45 to 60K saved to cover for 8 to 12 months.
Yeah, some people might even say 6 months. It really depends on
it might even be less.
your level of comfort. But that's a good starting point, I'd say, as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And so a benefit is like, so if you have a spouse or a partner that can cover some of that burn or all of that burn because of their salary, that's helpful. If you have savings from whatever stocks or whatever you have, that's helpful. Like there's a lot of ways you can get to that number, but in my, enlightened state, I feel like I was looking at it too conservatively before, where it was like, okay, it would be nice to have a couple years of this saved and then I can go all in. But at that state, the reason I was so conservative is because I didn't have any traction on anything. But now, as soon as I got traction, I was like, yo, I don't need 2 years.
I gave you that boost. Like I need
exactly.
to do this now. There's an opportunity cost as well to not making the most of the traction when you actually see it.
Exactly. So the best thing you can do is, I think right now the biggest opportunity to grow the fastest is short form video making content, period. That window might end and it might shift to something else. But if you want to make content, you want to build an audience, and you want to do something like what I've described kind of, I know I'm going to have to build depth on other channels, YouTube, podcast, email. But right now, you can get brand deals, you can get affiliate deals, you can get paid for views with short form video. And it's the best way to sharpen your skills.
Funnel, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would say, if you want to do something like this, I would start making short form videos. I wouldn't quit your job, but I would start learning the craft. And as soon as you have even a little bit of daylight that you like it, you're good at it, you're getting traction, brands are reaching out, and you have that 6 to 12 month safety net, I would just go. Because at the end of the day, barring a cataclysmic collapse, you can just go back to a job similar to what you have right now.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to get a job at that company because they're probably going to be pissed, but you could go back to a competitor or like a similar job, similar income range, and it's not going to take you that long to get that, maybe a couple months. So I think most people, and me included up to this point, they're just too conservative and they're not willing to take the risk. Now, we'll see where I'm at in 12 months. Like I might still not be covering the burn and all these ad dollars might dry up, but that's kind of how I think about it now.
That's helpful. That's helpful. And so how long have you now been, when did you actually quit your job and how long has it been that you've been doing it full time?
I'm sending my exit email after this. So tomorrow's my last day.
Oh, yeah. It's actually, oh my God, no way.
Yeah. I gave notice amazing. 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, damn. Yeah. Cause when we spoke over text, it sounded like you were doing it and I wasn't sure. So this is happening right now. So you're still technically working, but you've got like, it's literally your last day tomorrow. That's incredible.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah,
wow.
You heard it here first.
We picked the timing perfectly. This is like one we're going to look back at. No, man, I have no doubt you'll keep crushing it on there. So congrats on that, because that's a big move. And I think just honestly that you said there, the mental load of having other things to think about. And sometimes it's not even just to do something. Like my missus, she is taking a sabbatical right now from her company. She's been doing it 5 years, got super burnt out, did very, very well. Like the business was a success. Made lots of money, but then it got to a point where she was just so burnt out. She's like, this is not like gonna keep serving me, and I'm gonna need to switch it up at some point. Like I need a hard break, and that's what she's just started doing. And you can just see slowly, like it's like she's like the load that she had on her, mentally is slowly improving, which is what you want. Yeah, so that is kind of I think also again. She didn't do that, and I didn't do that when I was 21 years old with no skills, no experience, no nothing, no savings. Both of us have saved up a lot of money, so we are able to do these things. And so I think it really depends. Similar to you, I'm sure you've been, working for some time, earning good salary. So it really depends. And now someone else is 18 years old and is able to do that straight away, and they're living at home with their parents. Like that's another way to do it. Or you go and get 4 roommates and you take your burn down to $1,000 a month. Like that's another way of doing it.
Exactly.
So it's just the one thing I would really warn of though is like, don't be getting into debt, like crazy debt where you're living above your means. Personally, I'm just never going to say anyone should do that, because that is a slippery slope. And if you're just like, oh, well, one day I'm going to make it all back from this thing. Like, again, I've had people on the show that have done that. So there are examples, but personally, I would just never want anyone listening to this to ever go into that position. So I think that's a smart approach. And I agree, like a lot of us will think we need more than we actually need. And now, like my example is I left 5 years ago, my last job, 4 or 5 years ago, and I saved up X amount. I was like, oh, I can not work for X amount of time. And then I started making more money doing like the consultancy stuff. And now there's another kind of thing there where it's like the consultancy stuff is great, but it doesn't give you the urgency to maybe do something else. So there is a tricky part there, but I also kind of don't mind doing that work. So it's not like I'm anti doing it completely. it has to serve your goals and what you want out of it.
Yeah. One thing I say, or the way I'm thinking about it now, is whatever you're doing, you want to try to get away from the trade your time game. Like ideally, it's basically like you quit because you either have a skill or you're going to build a skill. The content's like one option, but like you build that skill. If everything goes to shit, you go to zero, you can then sell your time because you know that skill. So like yours didn't go to zero, but like you basically have a skill in digital marketing. You could have let it burn all the way down, or you were like, let me trade my time for digital marketing, and you get a better markup on that time because you're the owner now. But you could at some point decide to be like, okay, I'm not going to trade my time for the skill. I'm going to like go build a SaaS tool or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if it doesn't work, you could trade your time again. Like you always have that. And I would actually
just add one little nuance to it, because I also agree about the trading time thing. The one thing I will say, there's a slight difference between like the way I've done it and evolved. Originally, it was much closer to like what you're used to, which is a job. You get paid to do a certain amount of work. Mine has evolved for some time into like we're selling a service to someone, and it doesn't matter how long we take to run the service. It is, there's an outcome that is being sold to someone, and that is a lot better because it's a lot more scalable of your own time. So it's never like, oh, we're billing X amount of hours like a lawyer, or, oh, I need to be somewhere at a certain time or go to meetings. It's every month we will manage your paid advertising on these channels. We will charge X amount up to this amount of budget, and it's my job to figure that out. So I think that's one of the kind of nuances where, you could argue that's still selling some sort of time, but I think in some,
not as much.
You're always like selling some sort of time, right? Like that you're spending time on a product. So there's a time you spend on running a business, creating a product, recording TikToks, what Jack and Trung do, writing content, creating content. So to me, it was more about like, what is my input, which is the amount of time I spend, and can I scale that by selling an actual outcome, which is, I have experience, I have the knowledge to be able to help you run these programs or whatever. Look, don't get me wrong, it's not my life's work. Like, I know that, right? And it hasn't been, but like, there's enough of me that likes it. Like, there's a thing that I like marketing. I like digital marketing specifically. I like numbers. I like understanding how you can scale things. And I like working with startups and smaller companies and like being in that world. And it takes up X amount of time that allows me to do all the other things that give me way more meaning as well. So I think that's an example where it's not as sexy, but it is serving me.
But it works.
I think, it works at the moment. So that might change in the future. So yeah, that's very helpful, man. Did you have anything else on that before we ask you the last question?
No, I was just gonna say that is definitely different than like a pure time exchange. Like that's basically a productized service, which is even better.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say that like the benefit is, if you like worst case scenario, you can be a consultant in that domain because you have that skill, which is like,
you still kept your skills as well.
Exactly.
That's another thing. Yeah.
You took like going back to a company off the table.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, we've been here for almost 3 hours, dude. So I've loved this.
Damn.
I'm glad. I think when we were texting last, I was just saying it was great to see how well you're doing. Keep it going. I know how much work goes into it, man. So a lot of respect. More than just like the growth, it's just like doing something consistently for that long is incredibly difficult. So that is the most important thing. And the fact I think your mindset around it is perfect. It's like whatever comes from this is only made you a better, entrepreneurial person, creative person. And so, yeah, hats off to you for doing that, man. And I'm sure you're going to smash it going full time. We might have to do another one of these because we didn't even get to do all that. There was a whole section here on all the latest tech stuff, AI, Web3, social. We'll do another one. And maybe in a few months or 6 months, I'll get your take on how it's been going full time and doing that. So that'll be really fun, man.
Perfect. Yeah, this is a great little, now I quit my job like today. So this is a great little benchmark to see the pros and cons. We can come on next time.
This is the moment in time. This is the moment in time. Well, yeah. And if you listen to this, appreciate your help and spreading the word. Let us know what you think of this. I've been out of the game on Creator Lab for a few months. As I mentioned, this is now the stage where I've got to with it is that I love doing Creator Lab. I'm always going to probably be doing it, but I need to fit it into my life. So I'm going to be doing them next few months. And I'm not optimizing for the one a week anymore. It was too much. Like doing 2 podcasts every week. I might get back to it at some point, but at the moment I'm just doing as many high quality ones as I can. Like this is 2-3 hours of deep content. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Peace.
you.